Welcome in, everyone, to the first ever Hall of Fantasy League draft. A long time coming, so much hard work over the years put into this. But today, fantasy becomes a team sport and the world of fantasy football changes forever. We have 10 teams from 10 cities with 10 unique front offices. They will each select their inaugural teams today. Now, where does the fun come in with things for you? You can stake these teams. We'll get into all that information about staking as we go along this draft. As the teams come in, as you see those rosters fill out, you can place your stake on these teams. So it's going to be an incredible time. 20 rounds coming up tonight. We appreciate wherever you may be watching, from the Facebook sphere to the Twitter sphere to YouTube to Twitch. Maybe you're on Sirius XM Fantasy Radio right now. Maybe that's where you're watching. Incredible stuff. Now, I think that one important person to help me explain what this league is Matt Spasta, one of the originators of what we have here tonight. And I'm going to give you a little interview that I had with Matt before the season started. I know there's so many people wondering, what is this league about? They've seen the league pop up on their social media feed. They've been hearing about it for years. They know that this is the first national fantasy football league. They know that 10 teams represent cities across this country, but they ask the question, what is the Hall of Fantasy League? Matt, can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. So at our core, we're the first community-based fantasy league. We like to say where fantasy becomes a team sport. So, when you think about traditional fantasy sports today, it's a very individual sport. Yeah, maybe you play in a league with 11 friends or 9 friends, but we're essentially bringing fantasy to the masses by allowing fans to essentially join into the excitement of managing a team together and essentially participating in a fantasy league as as a community. We're doing this by creating the first national fantasy football league with 10 teams geographically located throughout the country. These teams are going to have individualized team brands, fun and playful names like your traditional fantasy leagues would, and the teams themselves are going to be managed by a professionalized front office of fantasy experts, sports media personalities. There are going to be former NFL players tied to it, and obviously Hall of Famers, just considering our relationship with the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company. So, again, at our crux, we're community first, and just given where this world is moving towards from a social standpoint, from a communal standpoint, it's going to be exciting to see people come together and rejoice over a fantasy team in a group atmosphere.
And again, congrats to everyone, Matt, and everyone involved that we have gotten to this point. The Hall of Fantasy League draft is here. Again, I'm Jeff Eisenband. This is Joe Castro, who's going to be with us for the early rounds tonight. Repping Philly out there. I know, Joe, you're going to have to stay a little unbiased out here, all right? Are you going to be able to do that?
I can't promise too much, but I'm going to try. At least, until the third pick, we'll see how we can do. But how's it going, Jeff? It's great to be here, man.
It's going amazing. I'm so excited to get this thing going. I got people texting me, they've known that I've been a part of this for, a few months, maybe close to a year now, but so many people involved for a long time. And we're glad to have you. And as we watch this, Joe, 10 of the brightest fantasy minds in the world coming together, not even 10 of the brightest, more than that, because most of the front offices actually have 2 people at the helm. How do you expect this to be a little bit of a battle between these GMs in these early rounds?
It's going to be fun, right? You said it in the interview that you had with Matt, and these are all, at the end of the day, friends playing fantasy football. So while a lot of us, fans, we look at them and we're like, wow, Jason Avant, the names go on, right? But at the end of the day, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle to go home and kind of brag to your friends and to your family and say, hey, I won the first Hall of Fantasy League. So I'm excited to see how these guys attack the draft. See how it kind of helps maybe my draft. I got one going on later tonight. So, maybe take a couple of tips and pointers, but I think it's going to be an all-out battle. Something fun. I'm very excited.
I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that. How can I get tips about my team? And how can maybe I don't want to put in as much work, so how can I stake the right horse here? And again, 6 times your money if you stake the right team and they win it all this year, 2 times your money if you get the second place team, and you will get your money back if you stake the third place team. Now, let me tell the people out there about the HOFL app, a very important. If you want to follow the league, you probably want to download the app. So let me say this, Joe. Throughout the season, stakeholders will be able to utilize the HOFL app to view their rosters, follow their matchups, and get news that is specific to their teams. The HOFL app will provide them with a place to engage directly with fellow stakeholders, as well as influence and vote on key decisions pertaining to their team. There will also be an ability to engage with the team's front offices. That'll be an interesting part about this league. How much will the front offices actually listen to you, the fans? I know on the HOFL podcast, we spoke to a lot of GMs, and they had some different opinions on how they would go about staking the teams. And Joe, I'm sure a lot of people out there wondering, how can I stake? We're going to have some more information about that. Staking in the app is shut down right now, but you can stake right now. All you have to do is go to stakekings.com/HOFL. It is that easy. Our good friends at Stake Kings are partner on this staking process. StakeKings.com/HOFL. I'm sure our good community manager, Charlie Ward, will throw that out there in the various social media threads right now if you want to stake teams live as these teams are getting put together. Which, Joe, I think, isn't that going to be something crazy that you're going to be able to do this as the draft is going on?
I think we're dropping a lot of firsts on them. We might have to hold off a little bit. Maybe you're giving them a little bit too much, Jeff. We're giving it enough. I think it's going to be great. I myself am staked to a team, obviously Philadelphia, but being able to speak to Adam Kaplan, being able to speak to Jason Avant, speaking to these GMs, and like you said, being able to make a decision kind of on the fly. A lot of times I just got my spot in one of my fantasy leagues. I'm at number 10. I wish I could stake in the guy who had the number 1 pick, right? So, it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be something that a lot of fans and a lot of our audience is going to be able to feel like they're part of it, right? So I'm excited. It's going to be awesome. I'm very interested to see how these guys handle the criticism and the glory, because hey, we're all football fans. We all talk junk on Sunday, so it's going to be interesting to see how these captains and general managers kind of deal with that.
Now, let me walk through the fans out there, some of the draft format. Maybe this will be more familiar to fans out there. We're talking about all the first, but this is your standard snake draft formula. There were some mumblings about an auction, but this will be a snake style draft, 1 minute, 30 seconds per pick. We'll see who actually needs to take those full 90 seconds early on. 20 rounds. We are going 20 rounds. This is a 10-team super flex league. Joe, that's going to add, by the way, a whole other element to things, right? Because you're going to wonder, we can talk about this right off the jump. What's going to happen with quarterbacks and running backs? How do you think teams will balance that?
Yeah, you brought it up. You said it perfectly. It changed. I'm sorry?
Yeah, no, Joe, continue on.
Oh, yeah. It changes it up, right? Now you're looking at people like Patrick Mahomes. You're looking at people like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson. Those guys, their value just, jumps significantly. So again, it adds another little curveball. I love that it's a snake draft because you get to give teams that are in the 10th spot, they have a little bit of an advantage as well, not just a disadvantage. So, it's going to be interesting. I know a lot of people are talking about the different picks. The middle of the pack picks are wondering, is a running back going to be my best option? Should I go for the best quarterback? It's going to be very interesting. I'm very excited to see if this changes up how people, attack the draft, because these quarterbacks are going to be huge for you this year. So if you're going to have 2 on your team, you better go get the best one you can, right?
Minimum 1, but with that super flex position we talked about, you're probably going to see a lot of 2 quarterback teams in the starting lineup. Let's take a look at some of those teams, all those teams that will be drafting today. There will be 10 of them out there. The first team that we'll take a look at is the Atlanta Hot Wings. The general managers are Joe Dolan and Graham Barfield. They come to us from Fantasy Points. And every team here has a captain. Their captain is Harry Douglas, and he has some words of wisdom for you.
What's up, everyone? This is former Falcons wide receiver Harry Douglas. Now, I'm the team captain of the Atlanta Hot Wings, the future fantasy champions of the Hall of Fantasy League. So if you love fantasy football and you want to win it all this season, stake the Hot Wings.
And that's the first team that we have out there. Harry Douglas giving a little bit of some things to think about from the Atlanta side, the former Atlanta Falcons wide receiver. And now we'll take a look at our next front office here. We're shipping up to Boston. Jennifer Eakins and John Paulson, they come from 4 for Football, and their captain is Patrick Chung. Of course, the former New England Patriot, Joe.
Yeah, I know him.
And we can shift over to Chicago, the Windy City. Is Jeff Ratcliffe at the helm? He comes from Fade the Noise. Eddie Royal, the former wide receiver for the Chicago Bears, is the captain of the Chicago Hog Mollies.
Probably my favorite logo so far, Jeff, if I had to pick one. If I had to.
A little bit of, bacon, ham, there's a lot of things that could be made out there in Chicago with that one. As we shift gears to the West Coast, and Chris Harris donning a full tuxedo for us. Looks like he's coming to the royal wedding out here for the LA Sidekicks, the superhero team. Chris Harris, Ricky Prohl, the Super Bowl champion from the Rams, is the captain of the Los Angeles Sidekicks.
Yeah, it's the first Hall of Fantasy League. You got to come dressed to impress. I love it.
And we keep moving along as we are just moments away from getting this thing started. As we shift back to the East Coast, this is the New York Bodega Cats. The people are saying this might be the best team name in the entire league, and that's not just me biased coming from Manhattan right now, but Scott Engel and Raf Rabe, Real Talk Raf from Roto Bowler. They are in there, and their captain is former New York Giants running back Rashad Jennings.
That's going to be an interesting
What's up,
one.
everybody? Listen, it's Rashad Jennings, and you want to make sure you put steak inside of the Bodega Cats because Raf and Scott are our GMs, but guess what? They're being consulted by me, all right? And New York is New York for a reason. We're the mecca of everything, so I know we're going to be the mecca of this league.
The Ohio Goats are led by Bob Harris, football diehard, and Michael Fabiano of SI Fantasy. Their team captain is Joe Thomas. Joe, I heard you were talking about Rashad Jennings being interested. This is a loaded front office from the home state of football, Ohio.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. You got a lot of good football minds. Hey, you guys seen the Philadelphia hat, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The New York team's already probably my most hated, but hey, I'm excited to see the competition.
And they are followed just to the east by your hometown team, the Philadelphia Powder Kegs. Adam Kaplan and a late add, Andrew DeChico, has been added to that front office. You mentioned Jason Avant being the captain. These are your guys, Joe.
Oh, I'm ready. I am ready. Powder Keg up. Powder Keg Nation. I've been hearing a lot of different hashtags. I'm trying to pick my favorite. But yeah, we're all in, man. I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
Back to the Pacific Northwest, the Seattle Hayes are led by Melissa Jacobs and Pat Fitzmaurice of the Football Girl. Pat Fitzmaurice, the #1 ranked player in Fantasy Pros contest last year. So a lot of hype about this team, and their captain has a message. That's Justin Forsett.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Justin Forsett here, former Seattle Seahawks running back. And today I'm excited to announce that I am now the captain of the Seattle Hayes. Yeah, that's right. I am the captain of the future champs of the Hall of Fantasy League. So if you want to experience the best of fantasy football, stake the Seattle Hayes.
Former running back right there for the Seahawks, Justin Forsett. We go to Texas, the big state. These guys said they're boomer bust. Sigmund Bloom and Joe Bryant from Football Guys leading the Texas Y'allers. And our 10th and final team, which actually will have the first pick tonight, from Sin City, the Vegas Pocket Kings, Jeff Manns. And he's joined by Marquette King, the former Raiders punter, as the captain of that team. Jeff Manns told me, you can't quote me on this, Joe, all right? Jeff Manns told me that he could get to Vegas in 3 hours as long as you don't tell the Arizona police where he lives.
I like that. You got a little bit of swag on that team. You got Marquette King on that team. I like that. I might have a second favorite. I like that.
Marquette King. We'll see if the Raiders or a team calls him back to punt this year. You never know what's going to happen with Marquette
Very
King.
true.
But
Very
those are your
true.
10 teams I mentioned. If you want to stake them, it's stakekings.com/HOFL. Stakekings.com/HOFL. And it's about to get feisty and fast because we are just about ready for the draft to begin. The first ever Hall of Fantasy League draft. And the clock is ticking down. Jeff Mans and the Vegas Pocket Kings are on the clock. And Jeff, you're really hitting us with this background right now.
Oh, he's ready. He already has it up.
I think he's half trying to talk to us right now.
Maybe an
Well,
insider.
I'm always trying to talk to you. Can you hear me now?
There we go.
We can hear you now.
Yeah, there we go. I'm always got football in the background, football in the foreground of the preseason games going on. It's a lovely day here in Las Vegas, and excited to make the first ever pick in the Hall of Fantasy League.
Yeah, I see. And we've got the other three teams next on the clock. You see above there. Jeff, was this a hard decision? Whatever's coming down the pipeline right now?
Not really. No, I'm not going to shock the world. It's a 10-team league. I know it's super flex, so quarterbacks are going to be in high demand. I'm sure we're going to see them fly off the board behind me. But I'm going to keep it real and keep it Carolina, baby. Christian McCaffrey is the first pick.
Jeff Mans going Christian McCaffrey with the first pick. Joe, that's the number one ranked player on the board. Is that what you expected Jeff Mans to do?
I cannot sit here and say that I'm surprised. I think we're going to see that a lot on a lot of draft boards. Great pick. I mean, it is a half PPR league, if I'm not mistaken. So you're getting the receiving, prowess of Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, a great running back coming off of a huge injury. So we'll see if that has anything to do with it. Obviously, the Panthers have other options at the wide receiver position. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of season he has. But great pick. You can't go wrong with one of the best running backs in the league.
So it is Jeff Mans and the Vegas Pocket Kings making the first ever pick in the Hall of Fantasy League draft. It's Christian McCaffrey. Right now, you're looking at our draft board brought to you by our friends at Sleeper. Joe, Sleeper is going to be with us throughout this draft. They've done an awesome job getting all of our GMs ready to go and really a clean look that you saw. You talked about taking some notes for your fantasy league. That's a clean look right there, right?
Yeah, I love Sleeper. I personally use Sleeper. It is one of the best apps, and it gives you up-to-date information. A lot of people do not realize how quickly they get their information out. So I think that's going to be huge for our GMs. I know they have busy lives. So, getting that up-to-date information, not having to, scour the internets for it, will probably help them a lot. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful set out. So definitely, I love it.
The Seattle Hayes have been on the clock, and I believe the pick is going to have to be in for Melissa Jacobs and Pat Fitzmaurice. They are in the Pacific Northwest. They are in that Melissa Jacobs, by the way, from the Bay Area, so right near. She's definitely an NFC, AFC West type of person. So she will be making, I believe she was on screen with her merch, getting ready to deliver this second overall pick for the Seattle Hayes. Melissa, what do we got?
Hello. I don't know what an AFC, NFC West type of person is, but I'm going to take that as a compliment. And the Seattle Hayes, we were going to take whoever was left over between CMC and Patrick Mahomes, our pick. Ooh. We're very excited. Going to rain some points down. Love him in this format. So Patrick Mahomes.
So Patrick Mahomes is headed to Seattle. Joe, and when I say NFC, AFC West, I mean, I know I said she's from the Bay Area. There's been two teams there. And then you throw out Seattle. The Seahawks, of course, have been in both the AFC and the NFC West in the past. Patrick Mahomes, this could be, you could argue it's a high position for a quarterback over the last few years of fantasy, number 2, but it just feels like Patrick Mahomes is different in that sort of way.
He definitely is. Look, I mean, she said it perfectly. With this format, maybe making a reach like this isn't the worst decision in the world. Patrick Mahomes, as we said in the beginning of the show, his value goes up in these type of leagues, along with a lot of these, Lamar Jackson. We can name off a lot of quarterbacks. So maybe it's a little bit of a reach. It'll be very interesting to see how heavy she goes with the skill positions after this, or if she just, throws caution to the wind and says, let's go get another quarterback. But it definitely is going to put some pressure on the rest of the teams to make a decision pretty soon. So I'm interested. I'm definitely intrigued in their thought process.
A lot of awesome comments right now in the Twitch sphere, in the Twitter sphere, Facebook, YouTube, Sirius XM Fantasy Radio, I'm sure as well. We're looking at a little bit of the notes from Sleeper right now. Again, Sleeper is what we're looking at. This is actually free agents. These players are not on current teams in the NFL right now. So these are if you want to later on in the draft, I think really get ahead and almost get that competitive advantage. That could be
Some
something
sleepers.
interesting. Now, number 3 is going to be, we don't know what really to expect here. The Philadelphia Powder Kegs, your Powder Kegs, Joe, are on the clock. What do you expect now with McCaffrey and Mahomes off the board?
First of all, I want to say shout out to the Powder Kegs. Let's make some history, boys. I'm excited for this. But no, there's so many options. Derrick Henry comes to mind. Saquon Barkley comes to mind. You can even go ahead and try and get the next best quarterback, whoever you think that may be. I'm looking at running back here. I think you go and get your best running back available. So maybe a Derrick Henry or a Saquon Barkley. I'm leaning towards Saquon. We'll see what they do.
The Philadelphia Powder Kegs are going with Dalvin Cook.
Oh, I was way off.
Dalvin Cook. He said it was an easy decision, Joe. What do you think about that? This is a guy who was second in rushing yards, I believe, last season. What do you expect from him this year?
I like Dalvin Cook. I'm a big fan of Dalvin Cook. Another guy that unfortunately some seasons have been a little bit marred by injury, but he has that receiving threat. He has that running threat. He's on an offense that is very high powered. I'm not mad at the pick at all. Like I said, I probably would have went with somebody like a Saquon or a Derrick Henry that kind of carries more of the load for their offense. I feel like he has two very good wide receivers out there. So we'll see what happens. But I love the pick. I'm really not that upset at it.
Awesome stuff. As I see some people, I see out in the Twitch world, I see we're getting some hot takes. Material Wolf out there says start 2 QBs. They'll go quick. That's where we talk about how unique this process is going to be. And the New York Bottega Cats, Scott Engel might have something to say about that. Where are you guys going at number 4? Uh-oh. Scott, we need an unmute here. You're too excited about this pick. Look at that gear too. Look at that hat, the NYBC.
I love it.
Hey, Jeff, thanks a lot. Great to be here representing the 5 boroughs, Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, all the Bronx. Great to be here representing New York in the first season. And with the first pick, first round, for us, the 4th pick overall, we're going to take Kyler Murray because it's a super flex league. The guy is just going to get better, Jeff. He could end up being the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football. There's a premium on quarterbacks in this format. Great rushing and will just get better as a passer, and he has a very deep receiving crew.
Incredible, Joe. Going to Kyler Murray. Listen, I had Kyler Murray on my personal team last year. He was incredible. But number 4, is that too high even in a super flex?
It's interesting. We said it, with the Patrick Mahomes pick. Now a lot of these other teams have a lot of pressure on them. If you want to get one of those top quarterbacks, you're going to have to go and grab them. I'm not mad at the pick. I think it's an interesting pick. He has a lot of weapons around him. Obviously, you add the best wide receiver in the game. That doesn't hurt. So he has a lot of weapons around him. Their defense is better, so it probably gives them more opportunities to be on the field. Again, dual threat quarterback. I'm not too mad at it. Maybe a little bit high, but good pick.
And we're moving along. We see the Boston Barflies at number 5. I've already gone ahead, and they've added Josh Allen into the mix. And there's John Paulson, who could take us through the 3rd quarterback off the board at number 5, John.
Once I saw Allen was on the board, I ran up to the podium and handed the card in. Last year's QB1, happy to get him. We were going to go Murray at the 5 spot, but happy to take Allen there.
So you hear it from John. That's a big pick at number 5. That's another example of a quarterback off the board early. You see that these GMs are adjusting to the super flex aspect of this lead. And why don't we just keep this thing going, Joe, because Chris Harris and the LA Sidekicks have their pick just about to come in. And we're getting the live sleeper update here. We might get the live critique
I like this.
or
I like this. I feel
announcement
like
from
I'm
Chris,
there. I
but
feel
there
like
it
it's a
is right
live
there at
event.
LA, and there's Chris Harris.
I still have 10 seconds left on the clock, so I'm probably going to milk it. My mom's watching. Hey, Mom. How you doing? Number 6. We're going to do it. The quarterback streak continues. All my followers are going to be confused and angry that I'm going to take Lamar Jackson at number 6.
Wow, Lamar Jackson, the MVP from 2 seasons ago, Joe, and now he's going number 6 here to a very confident Chris Harris, rocking that nice LA Sidekicks shirt.
I love the bookcase. That's a podcast goal for me right there. Is the bookcase. That's an interesting pick right there. I'm not gonna lie. Lamar Jackson's a great player. I don't really know what to think of that. I mean, I think it was kind of, I think it was a pressure pick. I think that he felt, that's the next best quarterback and you have to take him. So this is getting interesting, Jeff. This is getting interesting.
It's very hard to judge, like even looking at sleeper right now. I have my back end sleeper up right now and looking at the average draft positions, but you can't really predict because of this being a super flex league. Things are totally changing. You see more pink off the board than we're expecting, and there goes more pink. Again, not waiting. It is the Ohio Goats taking Dak Prescott, fresh off his injury. Michael Fabiano, you and Bob believing in Dak. Why? You guys are muted. You're too excited. We would love, we're imagining what this analysis is. Here we go.
I have a little bit of lip reading. No.
Let's see if we can find them on our Zoom schematic right there. One day this will be right on the field in Canton.
You gotta love the immersion, though. This is a big to do, guys. There's a lot of people working on this, so you gotta love how immersed these fans are right now.
Listen, Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. That's the goal one day out there in Canton, beautiful Canton, where we saw the Hall of Fame enshrinement last week. That you'd imagine will one day, hopefully, in a non-pandemic world, be the home of this draft. They're sorting everything out over there in Ohio. They have Dak Prescott as their quarterback, Jeff Ratcliffe, Eddie Royal, and the Chicago Hog Molly is here. You see the pick is in. It is green. Alvin Kamara. They go with the third running back off the board at number 8.
I love that pick.
And here's Jeff. Were you surprised that you got Kamara at 8, that a third running back is sitting there?
No, not surprised at all. You figure that these quarterbacks are coming off the board. And, typically that's not the way I approach the first round if I'm at the back end. So happy to take Kamara here. I think it's really good what these guys have done so far, though. I would have liked to have Lamar fall to me, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, there was some thought there, Joe. Lamar, I don't know who was more of a reach so far, Lamar or Dak Prescott. What do you think, Joe?
Dak Prescott. Easy. It is easy for me. Let's not look at the background. Let's not look at the hat. I'm very surprised. And listen, I think that he is, one of the better quarterbacks in this league. Numbers don't lie very much. But coming off that injury, this is going to, it's a very big risk, especially in the first round. So I'm definitely leaning towards Dak. Wow, Jeff, I was not expecting this many quarterbacks in the first round.
That's what we're getting so far. We've had 8 picks. We've had 5 QBs. We knew that the 10-team Superflex would throw things a little bit different. And this is what we've got so far. If you're wondering, what do we keep talking about this super flex? One of the flex positions does allow for a quarterback. That is a super flex. So you have your standard QB position, and then you have the super flex. So if you're doing the math right, I would put it at, I don't know, Joe, 95 times out of 100, a quarterback is going to get you more points than any other position. So that's why we're seeing a lot of 2-team quarterbacks in the first round. We can go to the next pick now as we keep going to the 9th pick, and that is the Texas Yallers. And there's Sigmund Bloom.
And I hope that everyone in my former home of Austin is dry, as I know that there was flooding there today. So best wishes, everyone there.
And do we have a pick, Sig?
We do. It's Russell Wilson. And I see that Derrick Henry went right after me. I was really really considering Derrick Henry. And I think it's a great pick, not to spoil the pick. But, there's a sense in Superflex leagues that you don't want to get caught on the wrong side. So actually, I don't want to spoil the picks, but since I'm on here and I'm on the clock, I'm going to tell you all right now that I'm going to pair up Russell Wilson with Tom Brady.
Well, so he goes right in with two quarterbacks, two future Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Russell Wilson and Tom Brady. Sig, they will have their names called in Canton at some point, you'd have to imagine. You stole, Joe, he stole a little bit of thunder. So let's go right to Atlanta, where they had two picks as well on the wraparound. Joe, he stole your thunder a little bit, but what happened there at the end?
Look, Sig said you don't want to get, caught behind in a super flex league. Here's the problem. When we knew when we were picking 10, we were getting caught behind in any regard. We had to go with the flow of the draft. There is no way I was going to reach, or Graham and I were going to reach. We're in sync here. No way we were going to just give in and take quarterbacks here where we don't have them valued. Derrick Henry at 10th overall. This is half PPR. I think that is a really good price for Derrick Henry. And we have to start 3 wide receivers. Devontae Adams, number 1 on our board. We're going to take him in there. Everybody went rush to quarterbacks. We're going to let the values fall to us. We're going to take the best players on the board.
Pretty incredible stuff happening right now with the Atlanta Hot Wings. You see at the end there, them and the Chicago Hog Mollies now doing it too. That running back wide receivers start even in this super flex league. Jeff Ratcliffe, you've chosen Tyreek Hill. You've gone the route of non-quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds. How are you feeling about that?
Still pretty good. It's still pretty good. I like how this unfolded. And, I'm going to go after it. This is the way I like to build a roster in the back end of the first round. So that's what we're going to do. My dog's barking in the background right now, too. So if you hear that, that's what that is. That's a beagle right there.
He likes the pick.
That's right, Joe. He likes the pick. It's not a hog molly. I guess it's actually a dog back there. Joe, you see how things are shaping out. What are you thinking so far as we come back around in the second round?
I love the ATL Hot Wings. I love their mindset. That's probably where I would go to. Don't reach for anything. Just build the best team you can. I like what the Hog Mollies are doing. They're putting together a very good team. I want to see, listen, Ohio, maybe they should have been a yaller with their first 2 picks. It's looking like they're a little bit, maybe riding one team, but it's looking interesting. It's definitely looking interesting.
Production, we're going to have to get, if we can get the Ohio Goats in here. I know we were having trouble before. This is incredible what is happening right now. Definitely. They have gone with 2 Dallas Cowboys. They're starting with the Dallas Cowboys offense right now. Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott off the board. I'm trying to get a hold of production right now. Can we get Michael Fabiano and Bob Harris? Because if we can, we're going to have to talk to Jerry and Stephen Jones out there and what they're doing, Joe.
Yeah.
And here they are. Mike, if you can hear me, when we did the podcast, I said, who are you going to be a GM like? And you guys said more like Jerry Jones, and Bob said he'd be Steven. What is going on right now? Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Oh, we need this. We need this analysis. You guys can take a second there. Joe, we can talk about it. We can continue to speculate on what's there and if we're going to see Amari Cooper in the 3rd round or something like that. How do you feel about the quarterback and running back duo from the same team?
It's interesting. I think, listen, it's a very high-powered offense, right? We all know that it's a very high-powered offense. Zeke, another guy that kind of faded out last year, didn't have the Ezekiel Elliott type numbers that we all expect from him. Obviously missed some games, but very interesting. I mean, you really got to love these guys to pick them like that. So we'll see how it works out for them.
Let's send it out to Hollywood. Chris Harris with the 2nd round pick of the LA Sidekicks.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So this is sort of almost exactly what I thought might happen, and so it's sort of landed in my lap, and it's not the typical way that I draft, but 10 teams is really different than 12 teams, and so my response is Travis Kelce in the second round. So we're going, I guess, 0 RB for the first 2 rounds at least. I'm going Lamar Jackson along with Travis Kelce.
It almost feels uncomfortable, Joe, but it feels like slight confidence from Chris Harris. Going quarterback, tight end off the board. Joe, is this where you expected us to see our first tight end?
Definitely not. I'm not going to sit here and say I did. I like the thought process behind it. Again, don't reach if you don't have to. I think there are running backs on the board that are probably worth the pick right there. But if you look at how, and again, I'm just kind of speculating, but if you look at how he might be thinking is you have a top 2, top 3 quarterback, and you have the number 1 tight end. So maybe you just fill out your roster with the best guys. I don't think that's the worst idea. So it'll be interesting to see where he gets his running back and who it is, though.
Travis Kelce off the board. He's actually listed as the 11th overall player on Sleeper. So that is something to think about as he drops there. We've obviously seen a lot of quarterbacks coming off the board so far, but that gives us a handful. We already talked about having a handful of teams that don't have quarterbacks. Now we see 2 teams that have drafted twice that don't have a running back. John Paulson, him and the Boston Barflies already have a quarterback. What comes in round 2 for you and Jen?
Well, we got last year's number 1 quarterback, so we're going to go ahead and take last year's number 2 quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, who just reported to camp, and I think I'm expecting another scorched earth type season from him. Quite happy with how the draft's going so far.
John, I got to hold you for 1 second. No Wisconsin bias there?
No, I'm probably less likely to take a Packer but this was just too obvious of a pick for us.
So it's Aaron Rodgers going to the Barflies in the second round. They have Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers. And let's keep it moving from Boston to New York, because the Bodega Cats, who had Kyler Murray in the first round, they draft right away, and no hesitation.
Wow.
No hesitation. Scott, Raff, what's going on? Yeah, Scott's focused on getting that unmute this time.
Lot of excitement in our draft room. You know, we were looking to get 2 top quarterbacks to start out, and very happy with Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert to start out in the Superflex League.
Justin Herbert goes next, and now we can send it to Philly, or we can get there in a second as they are on the board. Joe, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, the Bodega Cats going with the two young guns. Joe, how do you feel about that?
If this was a franchise league, Jeff, I would be scared of them in a couple of years. Hey, this is interesting. I think that's going to be the whole theme of this draft. Very interesting pick. We'll see how it works out for him. But Justin Herbert's a great player, so definitely an interesting pick.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to have to head things out for Philly now. They drafted 3rd overall, and now they get the 18th pick. What do we got?
Yeah, we're going to go with Nick Chubb here. I like the volume and too good a value to pass up.
Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is the pick. And that is, of course, little shout out to Ohio. Andrew DeChico making the pick for the Philadelphia Powder Kegs. That's the first player from the Browns. And Joe, that's our home state. Our parent company, the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company, based right around there in Canton, right near Cleveland. Nick Chubb, is that too high with Kareem Hunt in that backfield too?
You get nervous. That does make me nervous. Like he said, though, you got to like the volume. You got to hope that he's going to get that volume again. Another guy that has dual threat. Hey, I'm all in. I'm going to be unrealistic. I think it's a great pick. Let's go.
Melissa probably hitting us with the best merch today with the Seattle Haze out there, the hat and the shirt. Melissa, at 19, where are you going?
We're excited for this one. We did want the Mahomes Tyreek, and then we wanted Mahomes Kelsey, but we are very, very excited to have Mahomes and Stephon Diggs. Want a piece of that Buffalo offense, and now we have it.
Wow, that goes Mahomes and Stephon Diggs. And it's a good point, Joe, because the Barflies had a chance to go Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and they passed it up. You heard John Paulson talk about Aaron Rodgers and how important that was. but how would Diggs have played in there? You read a lot of things, a lot of experts who think Diggs could be the number one wide receiver this year.
Yeah, I mean, you always want to have that connection, right? It's always good to have that connection at least. But if I'm being 100% honest, I think if I'm, jumping off a ledge, Boston Barflies have made some good decisions so far. I love that you just spit in the wind and just say we're getting the best two quarterbacks we can, and we're gonna let them carry our team. So very, very fun so far.
Let's close out the second round. Jeff Mans in Vegas. Jeff, you are
I'm
muted.
here. I'm here.
It's a
I'm
late
here.
night last night at the Virgin Hotels.
Late nights, early mornings. Who could tell the difference anymore? But yeah, excited. Listen, the draft is going about how we thought. Although I'll say I was hoping Justin Herbert would make it back to me. Without him, I'm just not into these quarterbacks right here. I'm going to let the rest of these cats try to figure that out. I like what Dolan did. I like what Radcliffe did here. Kind of zero QB. Eckler's my third guy off the board overall, and I'm going to keep the no QB going with my number 2 wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins. So Eckler and Hopkins, no quarterbacks for me yet in the Superflex.
That is incredible, and we're going to we'll let these GMs focus now on a couple rounds. I know we've had them announce their picks on stream here for the first 2 rounds, but we'll give them a little bit of break here in the third round. Joe, that is incredible. 3 picks from Jeff Mans, who was in the number 1 slot. No quarterbacks.
Yeah, it might really come to bite them in the backside. I know I keep on saying that you don't want to rush anything, you don't want to reach, but quarterback, especially in this league, you really need a great quarterback, as we see more running backs and wide receiver going off the board. But hey, hopefully it works out for him. Maybe he can get a steal in those late rounds.
And we can see the board start to move. Aaron Jones goes in the second pick of the third round there to the Seattle Hayes. If you listen to the HOFL podcast, Pat Fitzmaurice, he's got his little thing that he's an owner of the Packers, one of those stakeholders of the Packers. So he gets Aaron Jones there with Melissa Jacobs at the second pick there. Calvin Ridley goes in the third pick. So now you have the Pocket Kings and Powder Kegs with no quarterbacks selected, and they've gone 3 picks now. Joe, looking at Sleeper, top quarterbacks: Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, Trevor Lawrence, Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins on the board. It starts to drop off a little bit. Definitely. These teams that still need 2 QBs, how are they going to make up ground?
Yeah, I'm surprised Joey B hasn't come off. Obviously, with that injury, people may be a little bit gun shy, but there are some names that are like, look, if you trust a Calvin Ridley, I don't think it's out of the realm of trusting a Matt Ryan to be one of your quarterbacks. You do have a Jalen Hurts who, even if he may not be the greatest throwing quarterback, he gives you that running, threat. So I think at this point now it's becoming let me make sure that the rest of my team is stacked, because you missed the boat on quarterback. So now it's time to make sure you have the best possible player at every other position and try and fill up that super flex with maybe something other than a quarterback.
I'm trying to follow along with the Twitch chat as it moves along right now. Let me know who you're staking. Shout it out there. Joe and I can mention it. There's just to update you on some of the picks. Jonathan Taylor, I think that's a great pick there for the Bodega Cats, a guy who was coming on at the end of the year, finished 3rd in rushing last year and had 146 less carries than Derrick Henry. Food for thought. I'm not drafting, but I'm going to give that to the people. Joe Mixon goes to the Barflies. Saquon Barkley, as we see Najee Harris come in, a rookie to the Ohio Goats. But Saquon Barkley, I want to stick on that for a second there, Joe. You thought he might have gone much earlier. We're talking about a guy who's coming back from an injury. We saw how high Dak Prescott went. But Saquon in the 3rd round, if that works out for Chris Harris, that could be a great pick there in the 3rd.
He definitely got lucky. I don't even want to say lucky. I think the way that he drafted it, it brought him into this position. You had the option to grab the best running back you could or wide receiver. I'm shocked. I thought Saquon was probably at the very least top 10 player, if not top 5, top 3 for me. Like you said, he comes off of that injury. It's a little bit rough, but even if you just look at the New York Giants as a team, they ran the ball well even without Saquon Barkley. So I think you put in a talent like him, only up from here. So I think he definitely got maybe the steal of the draft so far, in my opinion.
Wayne Gallman's still on the board, I believe. Najee Harris, Joe, that I think is our first rookie going to the Ohio Goats, who have been, I would call them the wild card team so far. How does that all factor in there? When you look at that with Zeke and Dak, this seems like a go big or go home move by the Ohio Goats.
Yeah, I think all three of them are so far. I mean, you look at Dak Prescott. If he doesn't come back 100% healthy, you're gonna have some issues there. Najee Harris, we have no idea who he is. He had a great, preseason game. Don't get me wrong. He's been tearing it up at camp. Obviously, had a great career in college. But rookies are rookies for a reason. We don't know what they are yet. So that's a very interesting pick, along with the Zeke Elliott. But if they do pan out, he might have a very formidable team.
I just dropped the stake link. If you're still trying to figure it out in Twitch, I dropped it there. It's stakekings.com/HOFL. If you want to get in on the action, we're wrapping around in the fourth round now. There goes our second tight end. It's the Atlanta Hot Wings taking Darren Waller. And hey, Jalen Hurts going in the fourth round to the Atlanta Hot Wings. There are some questions there, Joe. And I mentioned, Justin Fields also is kind of, there are some quarterbacks that we're not 100% sure if they're going to start 17 games this year. How do you feel about Jalen Hurts, honestly, unbiasedly?
Yeah, I love how you threw that in there, Jeff. No, look, I said it before, even if he's not the greatest with his arm, if he's not out there throwing 5,000 yards, which I highly doubt anybody expects of him, he's going to give you that run threat. And, coming from somebody that covers the Philadelphia Eagles as I do, I know that this team is really looking to be a running team. The way that we have so many running backs, Jalen Hurts adds to that. He's what a lot of people call a +1 quarterback. So I think that I don't want to say boom or bust. I think he was one of the better quarterbacks available, but it's a very high upside pick. But I don't know if the floor is necessarily there. But definitely he has a high ceiling, only up from what people expect from him, to be honest.
Again, that was the unbiased opinion of Joe Castro. J.K. Dobbins going in the fourth round. We saw the LA Sidekicks take Lamar Jackson earlier on. The Texas Yallers have now gone 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs. The Chicago Hogmollies take Justin Jefferson fourth. And now we have our first team that has gone 4 rounds, Joe, without a quarterback.
I'm very surprised, to be honest, especially with somebody like Jalen Hurts coming off the board. I think this is not a reach to go get somebody like a Joe Burrows, to go get somebody, somebody in that range that you think can be a starting quarterback in this league. There's only 32 of them. I don't know how, how long you want to wait.
I mentioned earlier on, I mentioned the list of quarterbacks that are available right now. I see Jalen Hurts has come off that. Joe Burrow is ranked next on Sleeper. Matthew Stafford, I think that's a great value pick. Here's a guy who always puts up fantasy numbers when healthy. He's not on the Lions anymore. He's on the Rams. He's taking over that Jared Goff offense. I know you lose the running back in there with Cam Akers going down, but still a lot of excitement you'd think around Matthew Stafford, but he's still on the board.
Yeah, especially in that offense. No disrespect to Jared Goff, but McVay made Jared Goff look like a goat at sometimes. So it was very interesting to see that people aren't so high on Stafford. I think Stafford's going to be a definite sleeper pick for somebody in this draft.
Speaking of the GOATs, we're again going to try Michael Fabiano and Bob Harris. I think they've changed laptops. We're hopefully going to get some analysis from Jerry and Stephen Jones out there. Take us through these early picks.
All right, can you guys hear us?
We can hear. Yep.
Okay, we're
two Zooms
so
that you guys
if you guys can hear us now,
we got you.
By the way, Bob would be Jerry and I'm Steven because he's much older than I. The fact that we took 2 Cowboys, first, I don't know who's doing the analysis there. I know someone from Philly probably wasn't really loving our picks, but it's the Cowboys, so I'm not surprised. Dak Prescott was on pace for 6,000 yards last year. The defense still got question marks. Zeke is going to be a top 5 running back this year. Forget about what happened last year. He was the RB9 with no Dak and 3/5 of the offensive line out. Then we get Najee Harris, the best rookie running back who could end up being a top 12 play. And now you get DK Metcalf, who is an absolute stud. So I think we've had a great start. You want players from potentially great offenses We've got 4 so far.
And there you hear it from Michael Fabiano. Interesting analysis from Fabs, football diehard Bob Harris with him. And of course, a shot at you, Joe.
I love
Little
it.
Philly with the analysis.
I like DK. Mike, I like DK. Does that, can we still be friends? I like the DK pick. No, I do agree with a lot of what he said. Like he said, you want to get great players from great offenses. There's question marks about Dak and Elliott. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, those questions can be answered, and they can be answered quickly. So I'm not hating on it. I love the picks. Very interesting. You need a little bit of interestingness in a draft, right?
Very matter of fact from Fabs, right? With those picks, like like why is anyone questioning us? We got the best guys available. Matthew Stafford does go off the board now to the Philadelphia Powder Kegs. If I was sitting there as Andrew Chichico making those picks and Adam Kaplan, I probably would have been holding my breath. I mentioned how high I am on Stafford, that he was still able to drop to them all the way there in the 4th round, the 8th pick of the 4th round. They get their first quarterback. The Seattle Hayes at a second quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. That could be a sneaky pick, Joe, with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown now running routes for Ryan Tannehill.
Definitely. And I think that this is where, kind of a little bit of foreshadow for these next couple picks. This is probably where you want to reach on a quarterback if you can, if it's not too far out of the realm. I mean, after the guys that we have now, there's not many people, as you see Allen Robinson going off. Maybe a Joe Burrows comes off, but Matt Stafford, I love the pick. Like you said, with Ryan Tannehill, he has so many weapons around him. Even if you want to look past the wide receivers, you look at his, running back. He has an all-world running back. So he has the weapons to be great. It's going to be very interesting. CeeDee Lamb goes.
Yes, CeeDee Lamb. We're reacting in real time with all you. We're watching on the Sleeper app right now. We recommend you do your drafts in Sleeper. We see how clean this board is, color coded with the players. And Allen Robinson goes to the Las Vegas Pocket Kings, who now, this is not a typo. Joe, I'm telling the truth down here, okay? 5 picks for Jeff Mans and the Las Vegas Pocket Kings. No quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. This is a 10-team super flex league, and Jeff Mans, we know he's got a little wild side to him. We know that this is Las Vegas. You know what happens in Vegas is going to come with you the rest of the season. Look at this squad. It's a great squad other than quarterback so far.
I mean, if in theory, if your quarterback was throwing to this team, I would feel comfortable with just about any quarterback, to be honest. But unfortunately, that's not how fantasy works. So, now the question isn't when he does it, but who the heck are you going to get? This is getting very interesting. You're down to the wire.
I wonder how many of our GMs have some guys like Trey Lance and Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson and, some of those Jared Goff in Detroit now, maybe even Jameis Winston, some of the wild cards as you go down the list, who you could find at late round quarterbacks. Terry McLaurin coming off an injury goes to the Seattle Hayes, and Keenan Allen to your Philadelphia Powder Kegs. That's what I would call one of the most consistent fantasy choices of the last decade, right? Keenan Allen.
Definitely, that's a conservative pick. I like the pick. I think you took the possibly best player there. You know what you're going to get from Keenan Allen. And to kind of move back real quick to what you were saying about these rookie quarterbacks, we talk about fantasy and we talk about +1 quarterbacks where they can run and stuff. That's where these quarterbacks, are moving towards once you look at the draft and look at how these quarterbacks are coming into the NFL. A lot of these guys can run. So that's actually a really good point. Maybe somebody does go after somebody like a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields, hoping that +1 kind of gives them a little bit of an advantage at that quarterback spot.
If you're not already in our Discord chat, I highly recommend you join the Hall of Fantasy League Discord. And as we're talking about this, I see Jeff Mans multitasking right now, talking to some of the Vegas Pocket Kings stakeholders in Discord. I don't even think he's not really a trash talk sort of guy, but just talking about the picks, feeling good right now, despite the fact, like I mentioned, no quarterbacks. There goes the New York Bodega Cats adding Chris Carson. We missed David Montgomery when in the 4th round. So kind of maybe what we would have seen from that classic middle of the pack picks in this sort of 10-team Superflex league. 2 quarterbacks off the board first, 3 running backs. So we'll see the Bodega Cats likely take some wide receivers and tight ends as we come back around. The Barflies hit a tight end a round ago. with George Kittle. And there goes Robert Woods. I talked about the Matthew Stafford connection. Could Robert Woods have a breakout year with that new quarterback?
Yeah, I love the George Kittle pick first. We'll start there. That's a great pick, great value. Robert Woods has been a very quiet but good fantasy player for many years, if we're being 100%. He doesn't, he's not Tyreek Hill. He's not, Julio Jones, but he's done some great things. So that's a very good pick, a very maybe slept on pick. I like that pick.
I already got someone shouting out, or I see someone saying Jessica Brand in Discord saying that Robert Woods was a top 15 receiver last year. So that is a note that you're adding on, as we mentioned, Matthew Stafford to that team. Joe Burrow, well, Josh Jacobs goes off the board to the LA Sidekicks. Chris Harris drafted a quarterback first, and then he's gone tight end, running back, wide receiver, running back. The Ohio Goats have their second quarterback in Joe Burrow. So they have Dak Prescott. By the way, they have Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow. You want to talk about gambling off of injuries, Joe? I mean, is that crazy, or is that just go big or go home?
Listen, I don't want to call Mike crazy. I think that we started off on the wrong foot. But no, hey, like you said, go big or go home. Joe Burrows, to me, is the best quarterback that is left right now. And I think he's somebody you're willing to take a risk on. I think what he did in the games that he played last year was incredible. He had a great year. So I like the pick. Kind of surprised it took this long to see him go. And as we see another rookie coming off the board, this is crazy.
This is going fast right now. You know what I'm saying, as the thing moves along. Mike Evans to the Chicago Hog Mollies. Kyle Pitts, Matt Spasta, I know you're watching somewhere. Don't take Kyle Pitts as high as Matt Spasta takes him, but maybe in the 5th round, you can get away with it. The Texas Y'allers have now gone quarterback, running back, tight end. They're on the clock in the 6th round. Derrick Henry was the first pick of the Atlanta Hot Wings. Now they mix in Amari Cooper and Adam Thielen. So Amari Cooper's not joining Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott with the Goats. Chris Godwin goes there in Texas. Chris Godwin, Joe, had a little bit of a down year last year, but maybe a bounce back is in store from the Super Bowl champ.
Yeah, shout out to Tampa. I actually live in Florida, and I was just at the game last night, the preseason game last night. It was a lot of fun. But look, Tom is a year fresh in that system. He's had a little bit of time with that roster, with that team. We saw him get a lot better towards the end of the year last year. So maybe Chris Godwin is a benefactor of that. I could see him having a great year. Crazy amount of speed. Former Penn State Nittany Lion. So nothing but love for the guy. I like the pick. I really do.
And here's the pick that we were expecting to see, and here it comes. First of all, let me make people feel old. This guy was was born in the year 2000. Trey Lance goes in the 6th round of the Chicago Hog Mollies. Jeff Ratcliffe and Eddie Royal had no quarterbacks to this point. He goes number 6. Is this where, obviously it's a super flex league. Trey Lance, I don't know, are we going to see him in your standard leagues, Joe, you think?
I think you will. I think that he's somebody that people are going to be taking chances on towards the end of the year. Nobody really knows what's going on in San Francisco. I don't know if the coach even really knows what he's doing out there. He said, all jokes aside, he did say that there's an open quarterback, that there's no quarterback competition. He's going into the season with Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, we'll see how long that lasts, or if that changes. But I love Trey Lance. I love what Trey Lance was coming out of college. So I think that he's going to be great in the league. And he's been setting it on fire through this preseason already. So very, very interesting pick. And I like it. I like it, especially at the point of the draft we are right now.
Hungry for sushi out there. Maybe not Philly, but maybe some Seahawks fandom or something says Lance being drafted is a joke. I guess Hungry for Sushi is not going to be backing the Chicago Hog Mollies. There goes Matt Ryan to the LA Sidekicks, another quarterback off the board, and Baker Mayfield finally to the Powder Kegs. Joe, it feels like the Powder Kegs, I'll say, escape with Matthew Stafford and Baker Mayfield as the quarterbacks in the 4th and 6th rounds.
I agree, 100%. I think Baker Mayfield is he's kind of a borderline guy for me. You have such a great running back duo. We saw that he improved once you let a superstar like you didn't let him, he got injured, but Odell Beckham leaves the field and, Baker Mayfield becomes a better quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this year with all his weapons back. Obviously, you have that great running game. I'm hoping Baker Mayfield's able to, get outside the pocket. He's also another guy that's a +1 type guy. So I like the pick. I think that both of the quarterbacks will be able to, do what they have to do. I'm liking my steak so far. I'll say that. I'm liking my steak so far.
Well, Hungry for Sushi says Pocket Kings all day. So I guess Hungry for Sushi isn't going after the Chicago Hog Mollies. Like I mentioned, the Vegas Pocket Kings need a quarterback as we come around, and the quarterbacks are coming off the board as I'm watching right now in the Twitch chat. People might be watching Joe on Twitter. They might be watching on Facebook, YouTube. We saw you shout that out earlier.
Definitely.
And we saw on Sirius XM Fantasy Radio, we have some things going on as well. Joe, it has been awesome dealing with you for this first hour. We've seen some historic picks in the league as I bring in our next guest here, Mike Crawford, the CEO of the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company, decked out in both HOFL and HOFRCO gear. Mike, we're finally here. The first ever Hall of Fantasy League draft is taking place before your eyes. What has been your impression so far?
You know what I love about it? First of all, thanks, Jeff, for having me on. It's working exactly as I think the company and I hoped it would. People are mixing it up. I'm looking at chat rooms, right? You're seeing this stuff go back and forth. People are questioning picks. The GMs are out trying to explain it. It's even more fun, I think, than the NFL draft and more engaging, which is exactly how we position this.
I thought football fans agree on everything, right? Isn't it shocking to see this discussion as this all comes in? But you've been a part of this, for a long time. We talk about the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company as the parent company to the Hall of Fantasy League. All the hard work that's happened to get to this point. How does it feel that we've actually made it to draft day?
It feels great. I think a team has done a fantastic job. Everybody's worked really hard to create what I always like to refer to as one-of-a-kind experiences, right? And I think we found white space here in the fantasy world. People are seeing it. You've done a great job helping us get the word out, but I think it's still new. The front offices are doing a great job, and this draft is phenomenal. It's really great to see this come about, and for us as a company, one more step in providing those experiences for our fans and our guests to enjoy.
I'll plug our podcast, right? The HOFL podcast, we did have you on. So if you all want to hear an extended conversation with Mike, roughly 40 minutes, we do have that on the podcast. But, one thing that we talked about there that I want to talk about now is staking being so important to this league and what makes it so different. Now you're seeing the draft happen. We're looking at the draft board. People are analyzing this to figure out where to stake their money. How does that add a new element to fantasy football that we've never seen before?
Well, I think it's been amazing for us to watch as we've taken the steps in the league, just announcing the league, people stake the teams, right? And getting the chance to back a team and be a part of a social community is something I think that's been missing from fantasy for a very long time. Now you start to see those teams, the front offices, and our commissioner, Terrell Davis, right, come into play and talk about this and bring their expertise to bear. Staking is what drives, it's the gas. It drives the engine here. And I think the great thing about our league is you stake, you get rewarded. You have the opportunity to get rewarded if your team wins. And the majority of the staking money gets returned back to the participants, which is the point of this, right? We want an engaged league. We want a community that's excited about being here. We want GMs and captains and even our commissioner. I think you were at a party I was at this weekend or past weekend, Jeff, with Enshrinement Week going on. And TD says to me, I really want to be engaged. I really want to know what my authority is so that I can actually, take some action where it needs to happen. And that's what we want. We want a professionally run league, but we also want a league that people have a lot of fun in. So the staking is a big part of it, right? And that's what we're excited about as these teams get chosen.
Yeah, let me say I was introducing Terrell to Matt and other people as this is our boss now. This is Terrell Davis. He's basically directing us now. By the way, for everyone watching out there, the Vegas Pocket Kings have now gone 6 rounds without drafting a quarterback. 7 rounds. So that continues to be one of the most interesting storylines as this draft goes on. Mike, sports are so 24/7 365 days a year now. And as I'm watching this conversation, I know you were in our Discord before, and you see the conversations that people are having in Discord and Twitch, in various social media platforms. It feels like what we've tapped into here a little bit is a fantasy football league that's going to run on off days. You know, it's not just about checking your team, setting your lineup on Saturday for Sunday. It feels like this is going to be different. How does this expand the football conversation to be a week-long discussion?
Well, I think it always has been in terms of how fans engage. You know, you watch for throughout the football season for injury reports and progress around teams and, you know, all the things that make it the exciting sport that it is. And, you know, with COVID, that's the factor that nobody counted on. And that's an extra layer of potential risk that everybody's taking. But you know, this now takes a lot of pressure off of people. They're watching and engaging just as they do with the NFL on ESPN, NFL Network, CBS, you know, any of those different channels, and the commentary around it continues to run. And so in the day and age of social media, all these different platforms, streaming, what's exciting to me is, and I've been watching a little bit of it in some of the ecosystems that I have sort of membership in, I guess. And it's just fun watching people. And we talk about this trash talking. It's already going on. and people are, you know, what were you thinking and not taking a quarterback yet? You know, all of those kinds of things. And I think it's going to continue as we ignite this league and the front offices get more active and we include the fans and the selections and trades and things like that. That's going to be even more fun for these folks. And it's going to keep the conversation going.
Yeah, we see the Vegas Pocket Kings roster is up on your screen right now. Jeff Manns, just going full Jeff Manns right now with no quarterback and a 10-team super flex through 7 rounds, going all the way to Mike Davis and Mark Andrews before he takes the quarterback, baiting everyone else in the league to take their 2 QBs before him. So wild stuff going on. I see Julio Jones has now gone in the 7th round to the Seattle Hayes. That used to be a guy that you'd pencil in for at least the top 2 rounds. We'll see if there's a little extra gear with him in Tennessee this year. Kirk Cousins goes to the Hog Molly, so they have their 2 quarterbacks right now, although we'll see if Trey Lance actually is starting this year. Mike, I don't know how, deep into the actual fantasy analysis space you are, but looking at this board right now, was there anything that has surprised you through these first 7 rounds?
I think just the fact that there's a lot of bet on the come, right? You've got some betting on folks, players that were a bit injured last year, coming back from those. You got some rookies on the board. Look, all these guys, these front offices are pros, and that's why they are where they're at. So I'm not going to second guess any of them, but it was interesting to see a lot of those types of picks early.
Yeah, Dak Prescott being the big one to the Ohio Goats. We saw Saquon Barkley go in the 3rd round, and actually the Ohio Goats going Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow. So 2 quarterbacks coming off serious injuries. The Goats are taking some chances out there. And we just call it Ohio. Could be Canton, could be Cleveland, could be Akron, could be Cincinnati, could be anywhere out there. As we take a look at their roster, TJ Hawkinson is in there at tight end. Dak, Zeke, Najee Harris, the first rookie off the board, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, and Joe Burrow. I mentioned Ohio. Mike, I probably should have brought up a little bit. We talked about some of somehow you guys let me into those parties last week. I don't know if I changed enshrinement week forever, if they're going to let me do that again. But, I said Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. This is where we got to have the draft one day. What is going out there with the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company right now? In Canton, obviously coming off of a very successful, awesome return to enshrinement week after two years.
Yeah, I mean, tens of thousands of people out on campus, really getting to see some of the progress on construction that we're making in the village. This past week, everything went full bore again. We shut her down for a week to get ready for the big, sort of weekend and the galas that were going on and the events. But we're right back at it. And, hopefully over this next year, come time for the draft next year, you're going to see a whole new set of assets, a lot of ways for people to enjoy themselves in Canton. But beyond that, sports is still a big part of what we're doing. So we're signing esports deals with Esports Entertainment Group and having a big esports helix complex here. We're signing deals with sponsors and we're signing deals, in our media space as well. I'm really excited about some of the media stuff that we're going to have coming out over this coming year. I think you probably saw when you were here, Jeff, we we co-produced World Chase Tag, which was aired on ESPN, and the company got a lot of airtime on that. But gosh, talk about athletes. It was sort of parkour meets tag, something I couldn't in my wildest dreams ever do. But it was a lot of fun, and a lot of good things happening now with the company.
The New York Bodega Cats captain Rashad Jennings was there, actually helping host World Chase Tag out there from Akron. That aired on ESPN 8 The Ocho later that night. The New York-centric person in me notes that in the 8th round, there goes Odell Beckham Jr. Has had a couple rough seasons in Cleveland, but the Texas Y'allers bringing him in there in the 8th round. And the LA Sidekicks taking the New York Giants #1 receiver, Kenny Golladay, in the 8th round. Kareem Hunt, the second Cleveland Browns running back off the board, goes home to the Ohio Goats. So 2 Ohio players already drafted there, Joe Burrow and Kareem Hunt. They're covering their bases. The Hall of Fantasy League adds a fantasy element to the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company. Obviously, Michael, this has been, such a big part of the football world, fantasy football. How do you think we could see emerging over the next few years of both the campus that you mentioned and the access to Hall of Famers with this league?
Well, I think you said it a little bit, right? I mean, the draft coming here, I think we can make this a massive event every single year where we have Hall of Famers come in, we have ex-NFL alums, certainly our pros, our GMs come in. You talk about fantasy, you engage with the fans, you give them a chance to participate in conferences and learn. A big part of this for me was teams, individuals are going to select their own teams as well, but you can actually see from the pros what they're doing and kind of interact with them. So our goal is to, really create synergy between all of our business units as a company. And we see this as a big piece of content that can fuel the stuff happening on campus as well.
It was almost a conversation, I feel like, when we were out there talking about some of those players, Edgerrin James, right? What a great fantasy player he was. There was so much conversation. I mean, Peyton Manning, obviously one of the historic fantasy football players in the fantasy football era. So that clearly came in to be a factor. I mean, is that, it's almost a way, right, Mike, that we're judging a lot of these players as positive and negative as that sounds. Now, fantasy has become a way that these players have become recognizable differently than maybe 2 or 3 decades ago.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, look, the reality is football is extending into so many different ways in which fans can engage, right? And it deepens the connection and it almost personalizes it a bit more. And I think that there are a lot of NFL stars today and former NFL stars that really enjoy fantasy and like the way in which it enhances their own brand, but also allows them to become part of the sport in a virtual environment. So, for us, it's exciting to think about how these fans and how our Hall of Famers and NFL alum, how they can be connected on a deeper level. And this was just another way in which our company can bring that about.
Those are the Seattle Hayes you're looking at right now. They took Patrick Mahomes second overall. We're able to get Stephon Diggs coming around, Aaron Jones, Travis Etienne, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, Julio Jones, and Ryan Tannehill making out that roster so far. We mentioned Ryan Tannehill. This is a super flex 10-team league, so a lot of teams going with 2 quarterbacks. And finally, Jeff Mans and the Vegas Pocket Kings in the 9th round finally become the last team to draft their first quarterback, going with Justin Fields, an Ohio State guy, Mike Crawford, in this first round.
Yeah, if you watched yesterday, Justin didn't look too bad. He, he's got wheels, he's got an arm, he's a big guy. I think he's got a great future, and looking forward to him playing. It's a bit surprising that's their first quarterback, but what do I know?
I feel already that, look, there's a lot of reaction. Trey Lance was drafted early. He had a big play, I believe, last night for the San Francisco 49ers.
Right.
So we've had 1 week of the preseason to take a look at these guys. Some people like to wait for their drafts, but we're going to have some staking time. Now, for the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company, it's mostly about football, but it's not all about football. And there are some big events coming through Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium right now. What should people be looking out for?
Well, we like to entertain people too. So we sort of say we're at the crossroads of sports and entertainment. We've got a major music festival coming up in September, our Highway 77 Music Fest. There are a lot of things happening in our media environment. Some of the docuseries stuff that we're getting ready to produce or already in production of. And so I think, the point of this is great content allows us to tell great stories, and it also allows us to engage in different ways. You can imagine at that 77 Music Fest, that's on a Sunday, there's football games being played. Could be a massive tailgate party going on there as well, right? So there's connections you find with everything, and football has connections into almost every single aspect of life, and it's an amazing sport. So we're blessed to be able to take advantage of that as a company.
Well, we're definitely going to have to get Dan and Shay staking a team, I think, is the bottom line here about what's going on with Highway 77. Mike Crawford, the CEO of the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company. It's been a pleasure talking with you. It's been a pleasure working with you as we've gotten this league ready to go, and we are finally here, the Hall of Fantasy League draft. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and thanks for everything you're doing, and thanks to all of our front offices and our captains. This is going to be a phenomenal year, and this league is going to really, really change the way people play fantasy as a sport. So looking forward to having a part of that. Thank you.
Well, we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Again, if you want to hear more from Michael Crawford, the CEO of the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company, check out the second episode of the Hall of Fantasy League podcast. The first episode featured Matt Sposta and Derek Siskin, and I believe one of them is going to be coming in as our next guest, as we are into the 9th round now in the first ever Hall of Fantasy League draft. You see the board continue to go. I mentioned Justin Fields. Jerry Jeudy goes to the Seattle Hayes. So there's 2 Denver Broncos wide receivers in 3 picks. Cortland Sutton looked like he was going to have a breakout year at the start, got hurt early last year. He'll try to make up some ground. There goes Michael Thomas in the 9th round. A guy that the LA Sidekicks might be getting some incredible value there. And Robbie Anderson to the Ohio Goats. And I believe we're getting word that Matt Sposta is about to come in with us. And there he is. There's the guy that makes sure I have a job. Matt Sposta is here with us. Matt, you one of the originators of this Hall of Fantasy League. People might remember the Crown League before the merger, before the purchase from the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company. Matt, how does it feel to get to this point today?
Jeff, I can't even tell you. I'm so excited to be here. This is such a surreal feeling, seeing this all come to life, all the hard work that we put into this. It's just amazing. It's amazing to see it come to fruition. It's amazing to see all of the pieces that we've been building for years just come together, and it's been fun to watch. I mean, the live stream so far has been awesome. The GMs have been electric. Some of the picks have been crazy, but expected from some of the folks and personalities and talent that we brought on. So it's just fun to watch.
Matt, I'm sure you've had this play out in your head dozens of times, how this draft would finally look when this day came. Does it look anything like you imagined now that we've seen some of these picks?
It's impossible. You never know how these drafts are going to go. I mean, I've been a part of so many drafts in my life that it's just like always expect the unexpected. That's what it is. It's how these things go, and it's just fun. I'm seeing these picks just come out right now. 2 just went off the board. Good luck in Miami too. I mean, we got to see that. We got to see some airing out starting to happen in Miami. But I think I think some of the picks that we've seen so far. I think some of the unexpected stuff, like the rookies going off early, like the Trey Lance. I love the Fields pick by Jeff Manns. I mean, sometimes it pays to wait. So excited to see.
Trey Sermon, another rookie off the board, goes to the Atlanta Hot Wings, following Damian Harris. Could be a steal there in the 9th round for the New England Patriots. Tua Tagovailoa to the Texas Yallers. Deebo Samuel goes to the Chicago Hogmollies. As we get into this part of the draft, Matt, the 10th round, I mean, this is where the real money's made, right? These are when you're trying to find those steals and trying to get that competitive advantage.
I mean, is anyone looking? Michael Thomas just went in the 9th round. I mean, James Robinson. I mean, these are some amazing picks. I mean, Brandon Cooks, we don't know what's going on in Houston right now, but, you get Deshaun Watson back there. Brandon Cooks is now the #1 guy. He's going to see, 15 targets a game as long as he could stay healthy. Michael Pittman just off the board. We don't know who the quarterback is going to be there at the start of the season, but, these are professionals picking professional teams. So anyone in the comments, anyone in the chat, you're going to hear people going off, but these people know what they're doing.
These are the LA sidekicks right now, and Chris Harris has filled a full roster of starters, minus kicker and defense. Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, A.J. Brown, Kenny Galladay, Michael Thomas, Travis Kelce, DeAndre Swift, Michael Pittman, Matt Ryan. I mean, I had to almost take a breath when saying that. This is what Chris Harris has gone with, Matt. That is a loaded roster, and Chris Harris,
That's a stacked team.
He has been, when we had him, he's got the full podcast set up, right? He's got the perfect microphone, the perfect camera right now, the bookshelf. It feels like he's got this extra confidence about him today.
Chris, when I think about Chris, and Chris and I have had a relationship for a long time, he is like a fantasy professor in my mind. It's like every time I talk to him, I feel like he's just dropping knowledge on me. There he is. Wow.
Yeah, we got Chris.
That is the guy.
Chris right now flexing on us as he continues to go along in LA. It's only 3:20 for him, so maybe he's got a little extra competitive advantage mid-afternoon on a Sunday as we are into the 10th round of this draft. The Philadelphia Powder Kegs on the clock. The Vegas Pocket Kings, we're almost up to them. Matt, I'm sure, like I said, you've played this draft in your mind so many times. I don't know if you could ever predict Jeff Manns and everything that's gone on with him so far.
You know what? He's playing the draft as it comes to him. Being the #1 pick is always very tough. You got to wait, 18 picks for it to come back to you. He's taken the best available, and he's doing a great job of it. And again, you look at his team. Justin Fields has this high ceiling. All of a sudden, he could show out this season and just be an amazing pickup on top of that loaded roster he has of receivers and running backs. So I love what Jeff is doing. I look at some of these other teams. I love what Melissa and Pat are doing out in Seattle. Again, I'm not a professional, but just looking at some of these folks do their work and really work their craft. There he is.
The man's
Jeff
opinion.
Manns.
The man's opinion. Jeff Manns gives us a little fist pump as he continues to work from the bottom right side of our screen, the bottom left side of his screen, at work in Vegas. I said it at the top of the show, Matt. He said he could get to Vegas in 3 hours. Just don't tell the Arizona PD. So one day we're going to have him at the top of the Virgin Hotels doing some extra Hall of Fantasy League work. He tries to make this pick in the 10th round. We'll see if it's a quarterback. We'll see where he decides to go with things. Now, Matt, for you and Derek Siskin, being the originators of this league, staking is such a big part of it. And seeing the actual teams being staked, and we see this live right now, stakekings.com/HOFL if you want to stake any of these 10 teams. How interesting is it to see fans putting their stake on these teams?
Yeah, the staking dynamics to me have been the most fascinating, and I always expected them to be, but the most exciting thing is people have, staked their claim, no pun intended, planted their flag with their home city, with their favorite analyst. But now what we're going to see is people rushing in to back teams. Staking's open during the draft. So head over to stakekings.com right now and stake your team. I mean, look at some of these drafts, look at some of these teams, analyze and say, hey, I'm backing the horse. I'm getting on the team with the best roster so far. And through 10 rounds, I think you can get a really good idea of who some of the better teams are. So just watching those dynamics play out, again, as I mentioned, we opened staking months ago. We've seen a lot of activity, but we're going to see that really ramp up over the coming weeks. And that's what gets me most excited. People are now going to follow these teams. Now they're going to back these players, the roster configurations. I mean, this is unbelievable. It's amazing watching it all play out in real time. We're seeing people come in and stake these teams while the live stream is happening right now. So, that's your opportunity to come in and really get an advantage over some folks. So.
And there he goes with his second quarterback in the 10th round, Jeff Manns. Marquette King and the Vegas Pocket Kings go with Daniel Jones as the second quarterback. So we pencil him into flex 3. We're getting a look right now at Scott Angle. Scott the King with the New York Bodega Cats. And Matt, Scott was rocking that Bodega Cats hat. I mentioned, there's some talk. Do they have the best gear? We saw Melissa Jacobs decked out in the Seattle Hayes. The Ohio Goats have that Woody Hayes angle to them. What do you think about all these logos and team names?
I mean, I have to tell you, we did a lot of hard work trying to assign, some of these management teams and front offices to their local teams. When you think of New York, when you think of the Bodega Cats, can't think of anyone more than Scott Angle or Real Talk Rap that really embody that New York spirit. So, it's exciting to see. Jeff's ready to pull out the gear. I see it coming. What is it going to be? It is the Bodega Cats, of course. And Jeff has to be impartial because he's the host tonight, but we know he's from New York.
You handed me this shirt last time I was with you, Matt. I did not even ask for it.
I have to rep the HOFL gear, so you see me repping the shirt right now. I am impartial, so I have actually a shirt from every single team, and I wear them evenly throughout my week. So unfortunately, they're only 7 days in a week, but I do wear them sequentially over a 10-day period.
We're looking at the board right now. Kenyon Drake with the Las Vegas Raiders logo next to him goes to the LA Sidekicks. A little Jalen Waddle action to the Barflies. Team's starting to dig. Team's starting to find some rookies potentially. There's Michael Fabiano and Bob Harris together.
How do we get Bob in the shot? I want to see Bob.
Well, we saw, by the way, shout out to our entire social team. I know Bailey Carlin mentioned himself in the chat. Charlie Ward, our community manager, there was a great tweet of Bob's face. Bob and Fabs' dynamic is really interesting. And if you listen to the podcast that we had with them on the HOFL podcast, they don't agree on a lot. They can't agree on Star Trek versus Star Wars, but they're going to have to agree with these picks here. Matt, there's a dynamic with some of these front offices. They're a really interesting one because they're two individuals who are friends, don't necessarily come from the same fantasy platform. But how do you deal with, and the whole community has to deal with this, governing a fantasy team as perhaps a duo and as a community with stakeholders?
Well, when I think about management of these franchises, it goes beyond managing a fantasy team. So Bob and Fabs, they have a really funny dynamic. I look at them more like brothers. If you ask Fabs, Fab would probably say they're more like father and son because that's a joke he likes to make about Bob. But, you go across these teams when you think of Melissa and Pat, who balance each other really well. And you look at, Fabs and Bob, who have been on Sirius together for all these years. I mean, they do such an amazing job because they have this great rapport. They have this great balance. When you look at Texas and the Yallers, Joe Bryan and Sig have been together for years at Football Guys. And same thing with Graham and Joe. So it's really fun. I've really enjoyed spending time with them, really picking their brain, kind of digging into their fantasy and football knowledge. And we're going to see that all come to life. I think the most fun thing is you go on our Discord right now, and everyone's got to check out our Discord because right now it is crazy. I mean, the GMs are in there. Jeff Manns is with the Vegas Pocket Kings franchise stakeholders, and they are having a ball in there. They're trying to figure out, it looks like he got Daniel Jones. So he's got his 2 quarterbacks now. He's got his super flex. Again, I look at this and you think about strategy. You saw all those early QBs go off. I look at what Jeff did. He's got this stacked team, and then he filled in 2 really nice quarterbacks with huge upside. Think about Daniel Jones. He's got all his guys healthy this year. Hopefully the offense kind of reshapes itself. You brought in Kenny Galladay. There's Joe Dolan. Hot Wings have had some really, really nice picks as well. Rocking the Hot Wings hat. Love the look. But again, the team dynamics have been really exciting to watch unfold, and it's going to be fun to see how they engage the community, how they engage the stakeholders, and how ultimately they manage these teams together to success.
I see. We can see the Discord. You can, if you're not in our Discord, give it a follow. Join the Discord because you can engage with all these GMs. And I see right now Jeff Manns talking to the Pocket Kings. They're disappointed that McCole Hardman is off the board as Joe Dolan and Graham Barfield are probably barking orders at each other out there. They have the wraparound. Joe was very quick to promote that they had the wraparound. We did a draft reveal show. That's what they ended up with. And Matt, in a 10-team Superflex league like this, is there a position that you think favored any of these GMs off the jump?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Superflex, you obviously have an advantage when you're bringing in a quarterback into that position. It's obvious. It's something that we all know really well. I mean, one of the big Superflex leagues that everyone participates in is the Scott Fish Bowl. So I think everyone coming off that draft is feeling really good about, snatching some of those quarterbacks early. And again, you're going to see that being favored. We are in a half point PPR league, so it's important to grab your receivers. We are a 3-receiver deep league. So when you think about the scarcity at that position, considering we have 2 flexes as well, you're going to see some of those receivers going off the board early as well.
We just saw Sig Bloom with the Texas Yallers. That's what they're looking at. Tony Pollard, a Dallas Cowboy, goes home to Texas with their latest pick. We saw Russell Wilson and Tom Brady, the first 2 picks, Sig Bloom and Joe Bryant, going quarterbacks right off the start, and they add Tua Tagovailoa in there with their 3rd quarterback coming in the 10th round. We're in the 12th round. Curtis Samuel. Naheem Hines goes, as we'll see that Indianapolis Colts backfield probably shake up. There's the roster for the Texas Yallers, Sig Bloom and Joe Bryant. I said they were maybe a stretch with Chris Godwin a little bit, a guy who had a great fantasy year 2 years ago, not quite the same with Antonio Brown in that lineup and Rob Gronkowski for the Bucs. Kyle Pitts is in there, Matt, all right? What can you tell me about your personal scouting report on Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, so Jeff likes
Be
to give me a
honest.
little bit
Be
of the
honest
business
here.
on Kyle Pitts because I reached for him in an experts league for the FSGA, and part of the reason I did it is because you think about the upside of that position in that system with Matt Ryan. You look at what Austin Hooper did 2 years ago. You look at last year. That offense is really kind of coming together now. They're a young team still in terms of their weapons. You got to imagine without Julio Jones in there, they're going to be looking for a big body target, and Kyle Pitts comes in and fills that void. So I love the Kyle Pitts pick. Just going back to that, we were looking at the Chris Godwin stack with Tom Brady. I mean, you got to love it. How could you not love that stack? So that's a fun team to watch.
Well, I love it from a value play, as like I said, Chris Godwin, a guy that went much higher in fantasy drafts last year, coming off his big 2019 season, didn't quite put up the same numbers in 2020. The Bucs won a lot of games and they won the Super Bowl, but we'll see how he does paired with Tom Brady this time around. And that's when you're seeing a lot of these GMs try to get the competitive advantage. I'm seeing in the Twitch chat right now, people trying to decipher the psychology of Chris Harris and what he says on his radio show versus what he actually goes after here. So, there's just such a science to a lot of these picks right now. As we take another look at the board, Robert Tonyan and Tyler Higbee, we're getting some tight ends off the board. And Jarvis Landry goes to the Philadelphia Powder Kegs at number 12. I believe, Matt, he was the leading receiver for the Browns last year.
I love that pick. I love Landry's upside. Every single year you see the targets are there. I think Baker's really coming along. I think Odell's going to have a big season this season, which takes some pressure off of Landry up the middle. He's a target machine. I think that offense is going to click. I hate to say it, they're a Super Bowl contender this year. Pittsburgh is somewhat weak. Baltimore's going to be tough in the division, but I think they have a chance. I mean, you saw them in the playoffs last year. They have the fire. They have the defense. It's going to be exciting to watch.
We just had Mike Crawford on. We want Ohio to do well, Matt. That's what we're rooting for. At least we're going to act like it. Ben Roethlisberger, speaking of Ohio rivals, Ben Roethlisberger goes to Jeff Mans, who we still can't decipher, the Vegas Pocket Kings, who have had, by the way, an explosion of staking in the last few days, in the last weeks. He actually goes to a 3rd quarterback before most teams do. After waiting all of that time to draft a quarterback, he takes quarterbacks in the 9th, 10th, and 12th round. Gus Edwards follows it up, Zach Moss. And now, Matt, we're starting to get into second running back territory. We get a look at Andrew DeChico drafting for the Philadelphia Powder Kegs. And this is what we're looking at with the Powder Kegs. Matthew Stafford, that's a little bit of a gamble, a new team for him with Los Angeles Rams. Dalvin Cook was drafted early. He was very confident about that pick, was Andrew. Nick Chubb, Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, Darnell Mooney, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, Myles Gaskin, Baker Mayfield, Noah Fant. And there's Jarvis Landry all the way on the bench. This is a deep Philadelphia Powder Kegs team, Matt.
And you're not surprised to see Miles Sanders there, Dallas Goedert, so a couple, homer picks for the Philadelphia guys. I know we have behind the scenes Adam Kaplan, putting in picks to Andrew, let him know, they do a lot of work together locally in Philly. I think they had to make a couple picks for the local Philly fans as well. So you may see a few additional Philly Flyers end up coming off the board. I'm sorry when I say I mean, upside picks later in the draft.
I see Jeff Mann says his followers know his board very well. So, all of these fantasy personalities have great podcasts, radio shows, blogs, and, I think that what we're seeing, Matt, isn't that something interesting? Just the amount of followers that these guys bring in, people who it feels like they've been listening to them forever. John Paulson there for fantasy. He's got his followers in there in Boston. As they continue to grow this. I mean, that's been an interesting part of this. The Boston Barflies, this is the team that we're looking at. He was so confident about Josh Allen, said we got the QB1 from last year at number 5. They're followed with Joe Mixon, Javonte Williams, Robert Woods, DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, George Kittle, Michael Carter, not Michael Carter Williams, Michael Carter, Tyler Boyd, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Waddle, Michael Gallup. I said the one critique that I had of Boston, Matt, was not taking Stephon Diggs in the second round to pair with Josh Allen.
I mean, when you look at someone like John Paulson, who's consistently been at the top of the rankings every single year, John does his research. He knows what he's doing. So I like to put my money on the numbers, on the analytics, and John is that person. Yeah, Jen into the mix, and they have a really well balanced team and management style. So excited to see what they're putting together. And again, it is so early. We're prognosticating like we're fantasy analysts out there, but we have no idea. And, there is always a little bit of luck in this when it comes to fantasy. So
Leonard Fournette to the New York Bodega Cats in the 13th round, right after Ronald Jones. So follow those picks as the season goes along. The Powder Kegs and Bodega Cats back-to-back taking those 2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers running backs. I can guarantee you one of them is going to have a better year than the other. It's just a matter of who you think is going to be the guy. James Conner, now in Arizona, goes to the Ohio Goats. Again, it seems like Fabs and I don't know. It's between the Ohio Goats, Fabs and Bob Harris, Matt, versus Jeff Manns and the Vegas Pocket Kings for who has been the biggest wild card team so far tonight.
Yeah, you say wild card, but when you look at the construction of these super flex teams, there's having those deep benches because these are deep active rosters is really important. So, building a team to have depth, to be able to have optionality throughout the season is going to be really key. We know about the injuries. We know COVID could potentially be a concern coming into the season. So it's important to have that deep roster, deep bench spots. And, if you're reaching for certain guys early, there's probably a reason. You're stashing running backs, you're stashing receivers. You want to have that depth.
We wrap around to the 14th round. Ryan Fitzpatrick. The year is 2021, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is still getting drafted out here. He goes to the Atlanta Hot Wings in the 13th round. Latavius Murray, another long-standing fantasy presence, goes in the 13th round. And Marvin Jones Jr. with a new look, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, who I believe is still, Trevor Lawrence with the Atlanta Hot Wings. How about that? That could be a wild pairing of quarterback and wide receiver. Trevor Lawrence with Marvin Jones Jr., Matt. He had a big year for the Lions
you saw
last year.
Oh, you saw that hookup yesterday. You saw Trevor Lawrence looking Marvin Jones over the middle all day. They got limited action together, but Marvin Jones is a stud. Every year undervalued. We'll see what Matt Stafford does this year, but now that you have a real offense in place, a real offensive coaching scheme, and you have Trevor Lawrence under center, I mean, Marvin Jones Jr. is going to be a stud this season. And to go back to Ryan Fitzpatrick, you said the year's 2021. I expect in 10 years to be having our 2031 Hall of Fantasy draft, and we're still talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick. So
I'm posting again in Twitch, the Discord chat. If you're not a part of it yet, I highly recommend you jump in there as we take a look at the Chicago Hog Mollies, still without a tight end, but Jeff Ratcliffe dialing it up with Trey Lance and Kirk Cousins in there at QB. Tyreek Hill, Alvin Kamara, Antonio Gibson, Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans. I mean, there are some stars on this team, but really some gambles being picked by the Chicago Hog Mollies at quarterback.
Yeah, again, Jeff Ratcliffe is a guy I really trust here. You know, he has a nice balanced draft. He's going to start filling in that tight end position when he needs to. But again, I go back to it. These guys are all professionals. They're playing the board, they're playing the draft as it comes to them. So it's exciting to watch it unfold.
Devin Singletary was his pick in the 14th round. Derek Carr, still in a Las Vegas Raiders uniform, to the Ohio Goats. The Texas Y'allers going with a guy that probably would have gone a lot higher in this league a few years ago, Carson Wentz, with his new Indianapolis Colts, lands in Texas in this league. And Matt, obviously you brought in all of these GMs. You're going to speak highly of them, but the unfortunate reality is someone's going to come in last in this league. When you've seen so many of these industry leagues with individuals, these high profile individuals that come together. There hasn't been this ability to stake the teams before, but how do you feel like there's a little bit of bragging rights on the line as well between these front offices?
Yeah, I mean, this is everything. Look, I've been a part of expert leagues. I've watched these expert leagues get drafted. People tend to follow along for the draft, and then they really drop off. The fans, they really want to see for the first time the GMs, the fantasy pros, be accountable for their actions throughout the entire season. They get to follow along. They get to be part of the action. They get to be part of, the conversation. And you're seeing that going on right now in the Discord, which is just amazing to see. These fantasy pros have really embraced this, and that's been the best part of it, because there is that feeling of inclusion. And, I think we all say it. We've been, people have been saying it forever. It's like, what do these guys know? I could do this. I could be a professional fantasy player. But, this is really the first time that their accountability is on the line. I think you're going to see a lot of fans and stakeholders really come and engage the GM. You have the ability to DM the GM within the app, which is a really cool feature where you get access to them. I hope the Discord stays, as exciting as it is right now. Scott, you need to wake up. You're almost on the clock.
Scott's digging. Scott must have like a full big board on paper right in front of him, is what I'm imagining. There is Scott Angle and Ralph Rabe, Real Talk Ralph, drafting for the New York Pocket Kings. I know I'm hearing that the folks on YouTube want to see the early rounds of the draft, so we got to get that for you. I just posted the Discord for you in YouTube. Also, Howard Tang says, hi, Jeff. Not sure if he's talking to me or Jeff Mans, but hi. Or Jeffrey Williams, someone in YouTube. These are the New York Bodega Cats from the Five Boroughs, as Scott Angle mentioned off the top. Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery, Cooper Kupp, Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, look at these names. DJ Chark, Logan Thomas, Chris Carson, Darrell Henderson, Justin Herbert with Mike Williams, Robert Tonyan, Leonard Fournette, and Henry Ruggs off the bench. It seems like the Bodega Cats, Matt, we're going for that sweet spot of 23 to 27-year-old superstars. That's what they're going for.
Yeah, I love some of the picks in here, and I know Scott is a really diehard Seahawks fan. I appreciate that he nabbed Chris Carson. Chris Carson's a stud in the 5th round, but he didn't reach for some of those other Seahawks. But, I look across this team, and I see some of these upside picks like Darrell Henderson, guys like DJ Chark now in the offense with Trevor Lawrence. Logan Thomas is a guy I love in terms of targets in a half PPR league. Bob Tonyan is going to be awesome for the Packers again this season. Henry Ruggs is a really high upside guy. If he gets clicking in that offense, we're going to see him have a huge year this year. So love some of those picks that Real Talk Raf is making with Scott.
There he is again from Sin City.
He's on the clock right now.
Jeff Mans.
You think he's going another quarterback?
He might, just to mess around, but I'll tell you, Jeff Mans, we're going to see how these GMs deal with their stakeholders. And, Fab said it in our podcast. He said, we're running the team. We're the guys that know what we're doing, basically trust us. And we see Jeff Mans has been engaging with his fans in Discord throughout the night. I don't know if it's been too much in his mind at this point. And he does go with the quarterback. He goes with Deshaun Watson, which will be is an interesting, perhaps stretch pick as his 4th quarterback. And Zach Wilson follows right after to the Seattle Hayes. There goes a rookie quarterback. There goes a guy that there's still a lot there, Matt, that we're not sure about with Zach Wilson.
Yeah, look, Zach Wilson, I think we're going to learn a lot about him this year. I can't imagine him stepping right into that new system. I think the Jets are going to be a run first team this year when you think about Robert Saleh's past. So it's going to be interesting to see him play, but he's a young guy with a lot of firepower. So, maybe he might start airing it out. I just don't think he has the receivers this year. But we got to go back to Jeff Mann's pick of Deshaun Watson. Although I don't support him as an individual, it's, I think, an amazing pick in the 15th round to take a guy like Deshaun Watson. I think it was, he's making up for lost ground for not grabbing a quarterback in the first 9 rounds. But when you look at the depth that the Pocket Kings has right now, it's actually really appealing. They're a very interesting team to watch.
Let it be known that Zach Wilson was drafted before Sam Darnold, who goes 2 picks after him. Sam Darnold goes back to New York. The Bodega Cats take Sam Darnold in the 15th round, and there goes Jared Goff. You talk about this pick, former first overall pick Jared Goff, who's now in Detroit. He lands with the LA Sidekicks. He's playing in a dome. He's playing in the NFC North. Maybe a change of scenery is what Jared Goff needs, and that's what Chris Harris is banking on, picking his, I believe that should be his 3rd quarterback in the 15th round. Evan Ingram now on the move to the Ohio Goats. TJ Hawkinson's already on that roster. 2nd tight end for the Goats as the Chicago Hog Mollies taking Troutman. Continuing on with the tight end trend that we're seeing now, Matt, as teams start to dig and find whatever they can, whatever gold they can find here in the 15th round. It's a deep, you talk about this need to be a deep league. It's a 10-team super flex league. I'm just the host of this stuff. When you guys were working on all of the rules and the roster configuration, what was the thought process in the 10-team super flex?
Yeah, so, when you think about a 10-team league, the one thing you always want to avoid are building these super teams. And how do you do that? By building really deep rosters that's both active and reserve. And, when you look at the depth that needs to be had to really have a team, to field a team on a weekly basis, you got to go out there and you got to be able to pull that backup quarterback to put in the flex position. You have to go, active 5 receivers deep and 4 or 5 running backs deep. So,
Matt, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think that we're getting the comms right now from Joe Dolan and Graham Barfield. So I don't know if I want them to throw away their pick. I don't know if you could hear that, Matt, but we've got a lot of channels going on here right now, and can you hear that as well, Matt?
I can't hear that. What's going on?
Oh, I'm hearing somewhere. I don't know if I'm on the phone with Joe Dolan and Graham Barfield right now, but that's what I hear. Go on with what you were saying about the roster configuration here.
So what I was saying, it's, you go deep into these drafts, and instead of grabbing backup running backs, you may have to go for starters. And that's why you're seeing guys like Irv Smith and Troutman go off the board. I mean, you look at what T.Y. Hilton did down the stretch last year, and it was incredible. I mean, if he's able to stay healthy, he's still got a lot in the tank. I look at a pick like Jared Goff, and I think about what Sean McVay was able to do for him in that system. Sean McVay, former quarterback coach, and I'm just concerned about him. He doesn't have the weapons. He doesn't have the Galladay, Marvin Jones anymore. TJ Hawkinson's there, who's a safety valve for him, but I think he's really going to struggle in that offense, and being kind of out of that McVay system may hurt him.
So I'm on a Zoom call with all of the GMs. That's how I was communicating with them earlier. And I guess Joe didn't have himself muted, but it's okay because he was talking about getting Gio, and that's exactly who the Atlanta Hot Wings take there at the end of the 15th round as they wrap around to Devontae Parker, who I thought 2 years ago had a big fantasy future. Sig Bloom looking nice. Hey, he's showing y'all what he's wearing. He's showing y'all what he's rocking. Sig Bloom, who went, by the way, to law school at the University of Texas in Austin. That's what brought him to the Lone Star State originally. Russell Wilson and Tom Brady, they got started early with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, the Yallers, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins. We mentioned the Chris Godwin, Tom Brady connection, Odell Beckham, Kyle Pitts, James Robinson, some interesting names with the Texas Yallers. As we move on in the 16th round, the Chicago Hog Mollies add Cam Newton all the way in the 16th round, and Cam Newton might get the start for the Chicago Hog Mollies in week 1 because we talked about Trey Lance being the first QB off the board for the Hog Mollies. We're not sure if Trey Lance is starting week 1, so Kirk Cousins and Cam Newton might be the QBs for Jeff Ratcliffe and the Chicago Hog Mollies to start. Russell Gage, who had a bit of a breakout year last year, goes to the Ohio Goats. Philip Lindsay now in Houston is an LA sidekick as the Hall of Fantasy League draft continues on here in the first round. Matt, we're talking so much about the present right now, and we've mentioned that you can stake these teams live right now, not in the app. Staking in the app is paused right now during the draft, but you can go to stakekings.com/HOFL. stakekings.com/HOFL if you want to stake. Matt, what happens after the draft? Where do we go from here with the Hall of Fantasy League?
Yeah, so after the draft, what you're going to start seeing is now that these rosters are actually populated, now that these teams are set, now that the stakeholders are taking shape, we're going to see these teams starting to get built. And when I say built, it's just not from the fantasy construction roster point of view, but really the community's coming to life. People are going to go out and they're going to buy their merch, and you could go on our website, the HOFL.com, and you could get merch. You're going to find some great stuff there. I'm rocking some of the merch right now, if you could see. Jeff showed a shirt before.
Look,
but that's what makes this fun.
I'm going to show what else I got here, Matt.
Oh, I like that one too.
Keep.
Sorry,
I thought we were doing a fashion show here.
Oh, I like that one too. But what I was going to say is now you and your friends could join in on a team together. You could pick your team, you could pick your management team, you could go after the powder kegs, you could grab the Ohio Goats. But unlike any time in fantasy, this is the first time that you're going to actually get to collaborate with friends, family, like-minded individuals. And the best part is when the action unfolds on Sunday, you get to share in the excitement with your team. I don't know if anyone's experienced that before, but I do have a co-manager on one of my big fantasy teams, and the amount of engagement and excitement that goes on throughout the week when we're communicating and then unfolding on the Sunday, the Sunday ticket, it's amazing to watch, and it's fun, and I think people are going to really enjoy this communal environment. They're going to enjoy collaborating with each other and with the front office teams, and that's what this is all about, making fantasy a team sport.
That pick by the Philadelphia Powder Kegs, that's Amon-Ra St. Brown, the 4th round pick to the Detroit Lions. And yes, that is the younger brother of Equanimeous St. Brown, who plays for the Green Bay Packers, and their younger brother Osiris is on Stanford right now. What?
We got Pat on the live stream.
Pat Fitzmaurice
Hey, Pat.
making his debut. We've already seen Melissa Jacobs from the Seattle Hayes. Got some nice red locks coming out of Pat Fitzmaurice right now, Matt.
Yeah, Pat's another one of those guys. He won the Fantasy Pros Rankings Championship last year. Another guy who's always at the top of the charts each year. The balance, again, as I talk about from the front office teams, is it's really going to be fun to watch. There he is, Jeff Mans sniping. He's ready to snipe.
The man's opinion. This is what he's done, the Vegas Pocket Kings. Justin Fields and Daniel Jones were his first 2 quarterbacks that he took in the 9th and 10th round before adding Ben Roethlisberger and Deshaun Watson. DeAndre Hopkins is in there. Jeff lives in Arizona. That's worth mentioning. Austin Eckler might have been a little bit of a stretch, Matt, at the end of the 2nd round.
It could be. I have my reservations about this Chargers team. I think everyone's really high on Justin Herbert. I watched what he did last year. I thought he was awesome. But there has to be some sophomore season regression here. You see it every single year. It's change a head coach, change a system. He lost Hunter Henry, so it's going to be interesting to watch. I think there's going to be a bit of regression in a tough division. And Austin Eckler, he's a stud when he's on the field, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field for a long time, over the past couple seasons. So exciting to see that. Taysom Hill just taken off the board by Jeff Mans. Jeff Mans is making up for lost quarterback round. And when you look at some of these other teams, they're not going to have the quarterback depth because it's on the Pocket Kings. So I really, really like what he's been doing here.
The Sleeper app is what we're using here. Sleeper. If you're not using it for your fantasy teams, I highly recommend it. You see how beautifully color-coded this draft board is right now. You talk about the quarterback depth, Matt. On Sleeper, the next highest quarterbacks on the board are Jameis Winston, who we just saw Taysom Hill drafted, so we're not sure, who's really getting more touches there in New Orleans. Mac Jones, we've seen Cam Newton come off the board. Jimmy Garoppolo, we've seen Trey Lance come off the board. And then it goes Teddy Bridgewater in Denver, Tyrod Taylor in Houston, Drew Lock in Denver, Andy Dalton in Chicago. So you're right. I mean, you're starting to really stretch if you want to find a quarterback at this point.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. It's like you look for the depth, and it's all sitting on the Pocket Kings team right now. So. Hey Jeff, I also want to give a quick shout out to some of our partners. Obviously, this isn't possible with the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company. They've been such amazing partners in supporting everything that we're doing here, and it's just been an amazing ride with them. As a main partner of ours. If you remember, Jeff was the host of Hall of Trivia on HQ. They were an amazing partner for us when the season was running last year and early on. Sleeper's been a great partner of ours. They're hosting our draft, and they're built into our back end of our fantasy app. So it's been really great working with some of these partners. And you talk about the history of the company when we were the Crown League, and how did things change when we were acquired by the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company. Well, outside of really legitimizing the league in a big way by bringing in Hall of Famers, by bringing in some of the talent, and also the amazing team at the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company, it's allowed us to really elevate our offering with some of these partnerships. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of those folks who have helped get us here.
We see Rob Gronkowski finally go there. There's Joe Dolan of the Atlanta Hot Wings. He's managing that.
Joe's working hard.
Field. I told them they're probably the youngest duo in terms of average age of any front offices in our league. So they've got some pressure on them for the young guns.
Man, those guys are studs. I've been following Graham for years back when he was at the NFL Network. And, when I was speaking to John Hansen, who's an absolute fantasy legend, he said, I love what you guys are doing, but I think I got two better guys for you. So he introduced me to the Fantasy Points guys, his partners, Joe and Graham, and I'm excited to see what they could do in Atlanta.
Shout out to Jessica Brand in the chat, who says, I found this all through HQ. Two of my favorite things, sports trivia and fantasy sports, and then sports models for success. So let's validate that, Matt. Jessica Brand coming in here from the HQ sphere, watching the first ever Hall of Fantasy League draft. As a couple of picks I want to point out here. I mentioned Rob Gronkowski to the LA Sidekicks all the way in the 17th round. Tom Brady's targeting Rob Gronkowski at least once in the red zone every game. Emmanuel Sanders and Sammy Watkins, two late wide receiver picks, two veterans, OGs, who could add something there. Jonnu Smith was a great tight end last year with the Tennessee Titans. Maybe Julio Jones taking some of the Ryan Tannehill targets, but the Seattle Hayes finding Smith in the 17th round. James White, always reliable in the 18th round to the Atlanta Hot Wings, right off the back of Damian Williams, who's now back in the NFL. Gabriel Davis was starting to cook for the Buffalo Bills. He goes in the 18th round to the Texas Y'allers. Jared Cook still playing NFL football, and following Gerald Everett, two tight ends with new homes that could add something to the league as we continue on here in the 18th round. Of course, the draft will end today, Matt, but staking continues on as we're sitting here. We probably have about 3 weeks or so until the start, maybe even 4 weeks until the start of the regular season. How can people continue to stake these teams?
Yeah, so, as we mentioned, we made an announcement prior to this that we were temporarily disabling it on our app. That will be back within the next day or so. There's just too much activity going on the app. We wanted people to have the smoothest experience they can. So we're sending everyone over to our partners' website, which is stakekings.com. stakekings.com/HOFL is where you could see the teams, you could see the stakes available right now. This is going to be running through to the start of the season. So, you may have noticed some teams were temporarily sold out. That will continue to happen. Teams will continue to be lifted in terms of their cap. So stakes will be opening up, over the next couple weeks. And, again, we always say while supply's less. So make sure you get your stakes in. There is really a sense of urgency that gets created when you see your team is sold out. As Jeff Manns, obviously, he brings in his entire army to stake his team. You're going to see that with some of the followers. From the other GMs in the league as well, but it's exciting to watch just the numbers tick up while we're even talking on the phone.
John Paulson still grinding it out as we see the Chicago Hog Mollies sending some messages out there to everyone in the Zoom chat that everyone has together. John Paulson managing the Boston Barflies with Jennifer Eakins and Patrick Chung, former Patriots defensive back, is the captain for those teams. Matt, it has been a pleasure speaking with you for the last few rounds. Obviously, congrats on everything that has gone on with this league. I think I'm actually going to tap you out to bring in Derek Siskin from the other room as we take a look at the Boston Barflies roster right there. Remember to stake all these teams, stakekings.com/HOFL. Matt, I know I'll be talking to you every day for the next, few months, but really appreciate the time. Congrats on everything. It's happened. The Hall of Fantasy League draft. It is almost done.
Happening.
It has happened.
It's all happening.
Congrats on all your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. I appreciated being on here and, bringing some of my fantasy knowledge into play. But Jeff, continue doing you. You're doing amazing. You're killing it. And you've been a great partner for us as well. So
I encourage everyone out there in the chat, annoy Matt with your fantasy questions, annoy Matt with your Hall of Fantasy League questions, whatever you need to do to speak to him there. Could we bring up that Boston Barflies roster list again, if we may, production? We had a great look at the Barflies there. And it is Josh Allen leading the way. Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. We mentioned George Kittle coming in. We mentioned Robert Woods on this squad, an early pick of Robert Woods. Michael Gallup, maybe a bounce back year. Emmanuel Sanders, some veteran wide receiver depth for the Boston Barflies. Irv Smith deep in there at tight end to back up George Kittle. And now I think Matt has shifted out of the chair and we're potentially moving in here. Derek Siskin, the other co-founder of the Crown League, that is now the Hall of Fantasy League under the Hall of Fame Resort and Entertainment Company umbrella. And Derek's rocking the Hall of Trivia hat. All right, we just had a mention of HQ. Derek, glad to see it. I got it behind me here as well. Congrats to you and Matt again, just the fact that we are finally here. I know how much hard work you both have put in over the last few years to make this happen. Harder work than myself, harder work than anyone else as we see the San Francisco 49ers defense start to come off the board. Derek, seeing this board, seeing this all become a reality, what has the last few hours been like for you?
It's been amazing. Can you hear me, first of all?
Of course. You sound
all
great.
Right. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, it's been incredible, to watch this thing come to life and see all the people chatting and arguing, in the Discord and in the feed, and it's been years in the making for us, and just to finally see it come to fruition, it's a dream come true.
And we're looking at this multicolored, multifaceted board. I mentioned the 49ers defense. Actually, the round before, we started to see the Bills, the Broncos, Washington, the LA defense come out. Is this anything like the draft board that you imagined coming into this?
No, you know what? It's been very unexpected. I'm not the most well-versed in the Superflex type format. So just to see all the quarterbacks come off early and watch people adjust. Obviously, Jeff Manns kind of doing his own thing over there, and that's been great to see. And all the chatter just around all the different teams and the different strategies. I think that's what makes this league so amazing, is that you have these fantasy guys, these fantasy experts who do a lot of mock drafts throughout the year. Well, this is the first league where you're really going to be able to follow alongside these guys throughout the course of the season, watch as they make trades and make waiver pickups, and then be able to interact with them and engage. And you could join and be a part of these teams, but you could also take the insights and bring them back to your home leagues. And it's just a whole new fantasy experience. And I think it's going to be incredible to watch it all play out.
We saw a little a tap there from Fabs to Bob Harris, his co-general manager of the Ohio Goats, who's still got to shake out this roster a little bit. Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow, those were those incredibly unexpected picks off the bat. Those quarterbacks both coming off devastating injuries a year ago, but might be high risk, high reward. Their Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense jumps on to their board in real time. James Conner, an interesting depth pick there now with the Arizona Cardinals. Derek, I mentioned it to Matt. I mean, what team has surprised you more here, the Ohio Goats or the Vegas Pocket Kings? Because both of them, I feel like, have taken some extra chances in this draft.
I mean, I mentioned this in the chat. Ohio taking Dak in the first round was definitely a big risk. It's one of those things that everybody was very critical about. And, you know, it's funny, the way that fantasy leagues work, you know, somebody makes a pick, everybody kind of jumps on them. And then I feel like it always works out where that person always ends up having the last laugh. So, you know, it wouldn't surprise me, especially with the receivers that Dallas has and Dak coming back, to see him go off and watch the Goats kind of rub it in everybody's faces. Obviously, the Pocket Kings, you know, waiting on quarterbacks, but then taking a bunch of them later on as insurance. So, you know, I think it's been really interesting just to see the dynamics. And when there was the run on the quarterbacks, everybody kind of having to jump in and take their own quarterback. And then there was definitely a lot of value in the later rounds, seeing these running backs, a guy like Saquon, you know, going as late as he did, you know, and a couple of the other skill positions. So, you know, it's just been interesting to see it all play out and see in this format with a 10-team league, super flex, the deep rosters, just to see the different strategies of the different front offices.
The final picks of the draft coming through right now, starting to see some kickers and defense. There goes Traquan Smith, though, to Chris Harris, who still had some wiggle room for one last position player there at the end. We saw the Bodega Cats just took the 49ers defense. There they go with Daniel Carlson as we wrap things up here. Andrew DeChico, a late ad in terms of the GMs. You can wave, Andrew. Andrew with Adam Kaplan, general managers of the Philadelphia Powder Kegs. They're finishing up. They are the team from the city of brotherly love. Matthew Stafford was a late quarterback pick, but perhaps high value for them. Baker Mayfield as well deep in there. I like J.D. McKissick deep on the depth chart for the Powder Kegs, came on as a third down running back for the Washington football team late in that year. Jarvis Landry, also high value off of the bench. Maybe some questions there with the starting lineup for the Philadelphia Powder Kegs, but we'll see as this league moves on. Derek, we're going to see a lot of dynamics with staking and a lot of different, you know, things with this league as people ask questions after this draft. Okay, this is what it is. I need to figure out how to stake teams. I need to figure out how to be a part of this. I need to figure out how to listen to the podcast. I need to figure out what app I need to download to follow all this. What do you expect from the Hall of Fantasy League in these next few weeks, gearing up to the NFL regular season?
I think it's going to be, you know, action-packed. I think there's going to be a lot of people asking a lot of questions, and we're going to be trying to answer as many as we can. But, you know, you'll be able to find us on Twitter, on Instagram, the HOF League. If you're on the app and you can download the app, there's going to be a ton of chatter going on. So, you know, any questions that people have, there's going to be tons of answers for all those questions. Staking is going to be really interesting now that the rosters are formed, right? Because now I think a lot of people going into this are saying, well, why would I want to be a part of a league where I can't, you know, directly manage the team? And I think, you know, the real control here is that you get to look over all these rosters and you get to see which horse you kind of want to back, which GM, which front office you think is going to be the best management team. Of course, you're going to be able to influence these guys and you're going to be able to give them your 2 cents and vote on a lot of different things. But, you know, that's kind of all the different dynamics that are at play, right? So I think, you know, over these next few weeks, we're going to see how all the teams are staked. We're going to see a lot of people saying, this roster is better than another roster. And then we're going to all watch it unfold throughout the course of the season. So this is just the start, right? And as anybody that plays fantasy knows, the draft is one big part of it, right? But then throughout the course of the season, making pickups on the waiver wire, making big trades, there's a lot of ways in which you could win your league. So this is only the beginning, and I can't wait to watch it all unfold.
Well, that is it for the that is it for the actual draft process of the Hall of Fantasy League draft. You're probably wondering right now, well, what do I do? Who do I stake? You could look at the rosters, or you could listen to what the GMs have to say. All right, guys, what's the pitch?
We are in to win, and you can be confident that we are not going to slack off with this team. We are going to be managing it to our full capacity, and our only goal is to win the gold.
We're also going to be really engaged with the fans. I mean, even Pat said we're going to want advice. We're going to want help making decisions that are those 50-50 decisions, which do happen so much more in fantasy than I think people even realize.
I think you'll find at the end, hopefully we have a well-balanced team with guys that have decent floors, guys with some upside, and guys that we think we can win it all with.
Fantasy is about the adjustments and the adds and drops and the trades, and I feel like my competitive advantage comes in once the games start, because I'm going to be able to watch all those games, and most of the other owners in this league are going to be kind of doing it based off of box scores and each other's rankings, and you can be rest assured that will not be the case with the sidekicks.
We're going to interact with you. I think we just bring a different flair to the league. I think the interactive flair and the conversational tone and the friendship that we have, I think, is really going to shine through. And quite frankly, I mean, we're in this thing to win it.
I think if you back the Pocket Kings, we're going to have fun. We're going to have energy. I will listen to you. I will do anything to win.
So I'm going to go out there. I'm going to be aggressive. I just mentioned like the golf analogy. Well, I'm going to grip it and rip it in the draft. I draft for the highest possible ceiling. I don't draft safe, because safe is going to safely finish you in third or fourth place in this league.
We're going to be working in tune with you guys, the stakeholders, to make sure that we bring a championship to New York City, and we can have a parade down the Canyon of Heroes.
We're going to do this together. This isn't a thing like we're up on, driving the boat and everybody else is along for the ride. And we want the input. Now we got to figure out how to manage that without it being crazy.
We'll run it the right way, and I will make you proud with your investment. Invest with me. We will engage. We will win together.
There to stake your money on teams in the Hall of Fantasy League. 10 different approaches, Derek. I know we got the opportunity to speak to all of these front offices before seeing that video, knowing the rosters. Now, what do you think goes into the consumer's decision on who to stake?
First off, it gets me incredibly excited. It gets me very pumped up just seeing all the different management styles. And I think that's what you really have to take into consideration, is that there's a lot of different philosophies. I mean, we like to talk about the idea of this is like the NFL, where you have a Bill Belichick who kind of manages one way, and you have a different coach or a different owner or a different GM that has a different type of style of managing their team. So it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have some people that are super engaged and willing to take input from their stakeholders. There are others that might be a little bit more closed-minded, and it's going to run the gamut. And I think when you're, somebody who's looking to stake one of these teams, that's a lot of the things that you have to take into consideration. You have to think about, okay, which GM, which front office do I believe in? Which one do I want to engage with? Who has the best roster? Maybe it's just which team do me and my friends all agree that we want to be a part of, because we just want to do this thing together, And I think on a Sunday, and Matt kind of alluded to this before, it's not going to be like your regular fantasy league, right? Because when your player on your team scores a touchdown, you're not going to be celebrating alone. You're not going to be commiserating alone. You're going to go onto the app, you're going to go onto the Discord, and you're going to talk to all these people who share the same fantasy team as you, hundreds of people that are going to be able to converse with you and experience the highs and the lows of the season. And I think that's what we're bringing to the table, something incredibly unique, and something that's going to allow you to experience fantasy in a whole different way and hopefully gain a lot of insights that you could take and use in your various home leagues as well.
When we say community-based, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about there are 10 different cities involved here. You don't have to stake your home city. You don't have to live in the city. You can stake that team. You can stake your favorite personality, and then you engage and you live. Maybe it's in the Discord channels. Maybe it's in the app. You live that Sunday with those individuals. You live and die with them as the fantasy week progresses. I see people in the chat out there. If you want to download the app, it is in the Apple Store. Search the Hall of Fantasy League. Some of you are saying, I have an Android. We are working on that Android app coming to you. If you want to stake right now, you can. You don't have to just stake in the app. In fact, staking has been closed during this draft in the app. If you want to stake, it's stakekings.com/HOFL. And the Pure on YX has been nice enough to put that in the Twitch chat right now for any of you that are trying to figure out how to stake a team right now. I know a lot of you are trying to figure out what the draft board looks like. We're getting you a final product of the draft before we send you away on the night, but this will all be in Sleeper. Derek, what can we say about Sleeper? I mean, they've been incredible. As we take a look at the Vegas Pocket Kings, this was the team, Derek, with the first pick of the first round, but they waited until the 9th round to take a quarterback. Jeff Manns, this is the man's opinion. He took a very, very unique route. And how do you feel about this roster that he's landed with?
I think it's a great roster. I've been mentioning it in the chat. When everybody goes right and you go left, I think that's a great strategy. Jeff Ratcliffe actually even mentioned in his little interview, right? You can't play it safe here, right? Because if you play it safe, you end up in the middle. You have to go unconventional sometimes to win it all. And I like what he did. I mean, McCaffrey obviously is a home run type of guy, but then you just see the skill position players across the board. And then he gave himself some depth at QB. Deshaun Watson, very, very late, is a super interesting pick to me. I happen to be a Raheem Mostert stan. He's the type of guy that I think getting so late, he can really make a big difference this year. So that's one of those teams that I would look out for sure is the Pocket Kings.
They had the first pick. We can move on to the Seattle Hayes that came next. Melissa Jacobs and Pat Fitzmaurice leading this with Justin Forsett. Jeff Manns' captain is Marquette King. This is the team out there in the Pacific Northwest. Now, they took Patrick Mahomes with that second overall pick. And that kind of set the tone. We saw some teams wait with quarterbacks. I guess, is it for any league or is it just our 10-team Superflex, Derek, that you got to go Patrick Mahomes at number 2?
You know what? I think it might be pretty specific to our league. I don't know that the quarterbacks would, there'd be a run on quarterbacks in most standard leagues without the super flex. But this Hayes roster is one that I think it might be my favorite of the board. Just love the Aaron Jones pick in the third. Julio Jones, obviously. I'm a Wisconsin Badger, so Melvin Gordon, I love to see that too. But just to me, this looks like a very stout roster.
And I see Matt Spasta and Charlie talking in the chat right now about that Android app. We mentioned there will be an Android app coming. Philadelphia Powder Kicks. They went third. Andrew DeChico and Adam Kaplan. Jason Avant is their captain. The Matthew Stafford pick I've touched on. I like Noah Fant as a second tight end in the second round. Jarvis Landry, J.D. McKissick, some good depth on this team. It's guys like Darnell Mooney, Dallas Goedert that I'm worried about, Derek. Maybe Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders, a little too much homerism in Philadelphia. You're an Eagles fan. How do you feel about the Powder Kicks?
I feel in a similar way to you. Miles Sanders, I love him, but, he's been a little bit inconsistent to start. We'll see what happens with Matt Stafford. Some of the other, skill position guys in the beginning, Chubb and obviously, what's his name, Cook. Those guys are home run type of guys, along with who is there? Yeah, I didn't even see the roster, but they had who they have on the Falcons. They had one of their guys, didn't they?
They might have had Gage. Did they have Gage in there, or was it?
No, they had the. Who did they have? They had the number 1 guy on Falcons, didn't they?
Calvin Ridley.
Oh yeah, I think they had Ridley. Yeah, so those are some great guys, but the rest of the roster, we'll see with the Powder Kegs.
Well, we'll see how the team from our hometown, the New York Bodega Cats, they had the 4th overall pick. Scott Angle, Real Talk, Raf, and Rashad Jennings leading the team from the 5 boroughs. And I think I said this to Matt before, that they really went for that sweet spot of 23 to 27-year-old superstars. Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor, your guy from Wisconsin, David Montgomery, you see Juju Smith-Schuster in there, DJ Chark, Chris Carson, Justin Herbert. There's a lot of potential firepower and a lot of players potentially hitting their prime on this team.
Super formidable lineup here. I love the Herbert pick. I'm a little bit higher on him than Spasta is, just because I saw what he could do last season, and I think he carries over this season. I don't think there's a sophomore slump. Tunyon, another guy that I think is, could make the leap this year. Obviously, he showed up big last year, but I think he could jump potentially into the top 3 of the tight ends. So I love that New York Bodega Cat roster.
We'll see if we get a rivalry between New York and Boston. The Boston Barflies at the 5th pick, John Paulson and Jennifer Eakins from 4 for Football with Patrick Chung as their captain. And I said it, I'll keep saying it. John Paulson said it. Said, I got Josh Allen. That's QB1 from last year in a super flex league. So he was feeling pretty good about that. Tyler Lockett, always a reliable decision there as the 3rd wide receiver on this team. DJ Moore had some great weeks, had some poor weeks last year. Aaron Rodgers as the 2nd quarterback on your team sounds pretty good.
Oh, for sure. And, he didn't even hesitate to make that pick. I think Javonte Williams is a guy, everybody's going to watch out for this year. It could be explosive. Even the guys like Michael Gallup, who is, at the last year of his contract, could have a real breakout season, especially with Dak back healthy. So Boston Barflies looked like they had a great draft and very calculated, and wouldn't expect anything less from Jen and John.
A guy from Massachusetts who now says he's a real Angelino, Chris Harris, picked the LA Sidekicks team. Ricky Prohl is the captain of that team. Lamar Jackson was a bit of a surprise, even to Chris Harris's followers, with his 1st round pick. You see Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, A.J. Brown. Travis Kelce was the 2nd round pick. So Chris Harris took a little bit of an unorthodox route here, but a lot of folks in the chat were pretty excited about this team.
Yeah, I think this is another one of those rosters that, watch out, because they just have studs across the board. If Michael Thomas is anything like Michael Thomas this year, getting him as late as he did, they're going to be a real problem. Very interested to see what happens with Galladay this year with the Giants. Obviously, Phillip Lindsay in a new spot in Houston, and we'll see whether or not he's able to kind of take the reins there. But I'm not surprised that Chris Harris kind of crushed his draft.
Matt Ryan and Jared Goff, pick your poison with that 2nd quarterback every week for the LA Sidekicks. The Ohio Goats, perhaps the most shocking team of the first 2 rounds, Michael Fabiano and Bob Harris with Joe Thomas. So much firepower in that entire front office. And they go Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott right off the board. You want to talk about big names, big city, big team. They go 2 Cowboys. Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow are the 2 quarterbacks, both coming off injuries. High risk, high reward mentality from Fabs and Bob.
Yeah, I think that's the story with this draft from Bob and Fabs. Can Dak and Joe Burrow regain their form? And if they can, then they have a great chance, because Zeke, Najee Harris, who's just a beast, obviously Metcalf is a stud, Kareem Hunt, these guys, they're no doubter type of guys. It's whether or not those quarterbacks are going to regain their form, and I think that's going to tell the whole story of their season.
A lot of hope from Pittsburgh and Dallas. They must have been watching the Hall of Fame game from Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton last week. We go on to the Chicago Hog Mollies, the Windy City, the Second City, Jeff Radcliffe from Fade the Noise with Eddie Royal on that team. Trey Lance was the shocking 6th round pick by the Hog Mollies. I mean, Jeff Radcliffe liked what he saw from Trey Lance in the 49ers preseason game. It's just a wonder if Trey Lance will beat out Jimmy Garoppolo for that starting spot. Tyreek Hill has been such a reliable fantasy player these last few years. Alvin Kamara dropping to Jeff Radcliffe in the 1st round. He liked what he saw. Justin Jefferson, a lot of playmakers on this team.
No doubt. And look, Getting Kamara that late is a steal. Love Justin Jefferson and Mike Evans and Tyreek. I mean, obviously having those three guys as receivers is key. Trey Lance, that's the big question. He gave me a lot of Pat Mahomes vibes last night watching him play. And I mean, if he could be anything like that Pat Mahomes season where he took the reins from Alex Smith, it's got a similar dynamic there. That could be one of those picks that kind of wins you the entire league. So going to be very interesting to see how he produces this year and if he gets the starting job, in week 1.
He definitely has the arm. I would say that. It's just a matter of, will he play? Patrick Mahomes did not play until week 17 that first season. That's when he started. The Texas Y'allers, well, these quarterbacks on the Texas Y'allers, you've heard of them. Russell Wilson and Tom Brady. They'll have their name. They'll have their bust in Canton one day. They are on the Texas Y'allers this year. Chris Godwin doubles up with Tom Brady there. That's what Sig Bloom and Joe Bryan, of football guys, were going for. And they've got a nice team. Kyle Pitts was the one I kind of made fun of Matt about, but James Robinson, Odell Beckham, T. Higgins, J.K. Dobbins, CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a lot of potential firepower from the Y'allers.
I love their draft, and they got a ton of value late, and where they got CEH, where they got James Robinson. I mean, these guys coming off the board as late as they did, finishing where they did last season. This team to me is intriguing. I love Russell Wilson. That's my guy. But just very stout team. And I think they probably got the best value in the late rounds and the mid rounds than any other team in this league.
The legend Darren Woodson is the captain of the Texas Y'allers, by the way. Our final team, they had the wraparound at 10 and 11, the Atlanta Hot Wings. Joe Dolan, Graham Barfield from Fantasy Points, Harry Douglas is the captain for the Atlanta Hot Wings. They took an interesting quarterback route with Jalen Hurts and Trevor Lawrence being their two guys. Talking about young potential, but we're just not sure what we're going to get. That's what they go with. Amari Cooper, we thought he might end up on the Goats, ends up with the Hot Wings. Derrick Henry, all the way at number 10, feels a little bit late, even in a super flex league for him, Derek.
I mean, that to me was the biggest shocker of the first round, that he fell that far. Derrick Henry, just a workhorse. And, on that offense, especially bringing in Julio Jones, they're not going to be able to stack the box. And so a great pick. The quarterback position, again, this is another one where that's the big unknown here, because they have studs across all of their skilled position players. Jalen Hurts and Lawrence, very high upside guys. Can they get it done this year? I think that'll determine the fate of their season.
Derek, I want to congratulate once again, and I do not mean this. I mean this totally sincerely to you and Matt, who I know have grinded for the last few years to make this happen. Congratulations on an incredible night. The Hall of Fantasy League draft has happened. We have 10 teams with 20 players. We have a season on the horizon. We have staking open, stakekings.com/HOFL. Stake a team or teams today. If you have Apple, download the app for an iPhone. It is search the Hall of Fantasy League. You can find it on all our social channels as well. The Android app is coming. You do not need the app for staking. All right. Stakekings.com/HOFL is the place to go. Follow us on all forms of social media: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. We had some awesome Twitch followers in the chat tonight. Join our Discord server. We want you to have a conversation, have that ability, whether it be in the app or on Discord, to engage with your fellow members of the Hall of Fantasy League community, as well, of course, as the general managers, the captains, and the front offices as well. Shout out to Sirius XM Fantasy Radio that simulcast this draft. We appreciate them taking their interest in the Hall of Fantasy League. So many of their hosts a part of this league. Shout out to all of the GMs who were so gracious with their time tonight and will be gracious with their time this season, managing those teams that you stake. Thanks to our partners, Virgin Hotels and Bacardi, for making this happen. Thanks to the Hall of Fantasy League for believing in us and getting us to this point. The Hall of Fantasy League draft has happened. Joe Castro, Mike Crawford, Matt Sposta, and Derek Siskin over there. Appreciate all of you joining with me tonight. I'm Jeff Eisenband saying good night.